Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome to the latest episode of the Hard Compound Live. This is episode number 203, I believe. For those of you who don't know, my name's Rich and I run and operate the Hard Compound. We're a one-stop shop for all things motorsport, and we can be found on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and these videos can be found on YouTube. We put out 3 written articles every day on those channels, and we cover everything from F1 to IndyCar to bikes, rallying, touring cars, the World Endurance Championship. And anything else that we can shake a stick at, and we cover that in the form of race reviews, race previews, throwbacks, birthdays, breaking news, favourite liveries, and all that good stuff. No nonsense, no controversy. We're just here to share a love of motorsport with you guys. So search for the Hard Compound on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and on YouTube, and come and join us. Firstly, my apologies for the delayed start. A few technical gremlins, but we have sorted them out. Just quickly, as you can probably tell, we do live video interviews as well. These are recorded on our Facebook, our Twitter, and our YouTube channel. They're saved in the live section on YouTube and in the video section on Facebook. We've spoken to legends such as Mario Andretti and Chip Ganassi and Jackie Ickx. We've spoken to F1 racers, touring car champions, IndyCar champions, Indy 500 winners, Le Mans winners, etc., etc. Head into videos on Facebook, live section on YouTube, and look through the back catalogue. Right, that's the long intro done, the shortened version. As I said, we've spoken to a lot of drivers, racers and team bosses, etc. And we've spoken to a couple of motorsport journalists and authors, and one is joining us right now. He's joining us this evening. To me, the motorsport writer from when I was a lot younger and reading Autosport and Motorsport Magazine and Auto Week and many other publications and books as well. The man behind it is joining us right now. So please join me in extending a very, very warm welcome to the legend that is Mr. Nigel Roebuck. Whew. Deep breath. Nigel, how are you, sir?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good, very pleased to hear it. Very pleased to hear it. Firstly, apologies, we've had the technical gremlins with cameras and misdemeanors, haven't we? But we've got them working, and we're all good. And thank you very, very much for coming on and having a chat this evening. I'm very grateful, and I'm very much looking forward to it as well.
Pleasure.
Fantastic. Yes, and in case David Tremaine is watching this, Nigel, it's all down to David Tremaine that you're here. He put us in contact, so you can blame David.
Okay.
Right, we will do that. Right, just before we get cracking, just want to say hello to all the people that are tuning in already. There's loads of you who have hopped on. Thank you very much. Very, very nice to have you all on board. John Kane, Simon Steele, Dylan Stratton, Barry, our good friend Barry out in the States, and a few others. You're all here. The comments and everything are working, and Andre Novak as well. Hello, folks, on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. It all seems to be working, which is great. If you have any questions or comments for Nigel, do put them in the comment section or chat amongst yourselves. We will work them all in as we go. Right. That was a bit more fast-paced than usual because we were a bit late. But firstly, Nigel, how is everything with you? How's life been treating you?
Everything's fine. I'm very happily doing not very much. Not going near airports, and I'm very happy with that.
Yes, nice to kind of get out of the hustle after so long, I guess. Yeah, it doesn't sound too bad to me at all. It sounds very good. Excuse me. So yes, I'm glad you're well. Obviously, we've got a whole host of things to get through because your writing and your words and everything have basically shaped probably everyone who's tuning in. It's shaped their knowledge and love of motorsport, and we're very grateful for it. And I'd like to take a bit of a dive into it, but what I like to do is start right at the very start with these things. Where did your love and interest of in like motorsport and fast, noisy things come from?
Well, I would have to say my parents. I was my parents' sport was very, very important in our house, and my parents loved a variety of sports, including motor racing. So I guess it would be, I would have to say, them. I have a very early memory of when I was about 6 years old and hearing this word Fangio, and it seemed a very mysterious word to me, and I was fascinated to know, tell me what that means, what that is. And my dad had quite a good collection of racing books, and when I was, I don't know, 7, 8, thereabouts, I started reading those, and we're being a Mancunian family. Our nearest tracks were Alton Park and Aintree.
Right.
And in fact, when I was 8, I started going to races with them.
Wow.
Then that was when I was 8 years old. That was 1954.
Wow. That's a fantastic era.
And I had the beginnings of an obsession with Jean Barra.
Yes, I kind of read this. It was one of the Grand Prix? I forget which one it was, but him and like Maurice Trintignant in the Ferrari.
Yeah, it was. I happened to see it was on not Grandstand. What the hell was it called? Sports View. BBC had a weekly sports program in the evening called Sports View, and in April '54, as I say, I was just past my 8th birthday, and I was watching it. And they had about a minute or 2 minutes coverage of the Pau Grand Prix.
Oh wow!
Which Barra in a Gordini won from Trintignant in a Ferrari, and the Gordini should never beat a Ferrari.
Sure.
And there was just a kind of 15-second clip of him at the end of the race, and that was the beginning of a childhood obsession, I guess.
Yeah. And I think we've all been there. We've seen from different eras. We've all seen that one driver who kind of sucks us in, and once it takes hold, that's it. You're sunk. You've got no chance of getting away.
No. It's perfectly true. And that first Formula One race I ever went to, the Gold Cup in '54, there he was in the Gordini, and he led away from the start and retired after 2 laps, which Gordinis usually did. I was completely heartbroken. But like I say, I mean, for 5 years until his death, pretty much my life revolved around him.
Wow, and it's I mean, as I said, I've spoken to people from your era, shall we say, and I always smile because for me it was Nigel Mansell and Ayrton Senna and Alan Prost and Martin Brundle, Derek Warwick, all the Brits in the 80s. And I just love hearing you guys talk about people like Jean Barra and Fangio and Ascara and all these guys. What a fabulous time to be introduced to it all.
Well, yes, it was.
Yeah.
And of course, the other thing, the great thing, I mean, looking back, people of my generation, we were incredibly lucky that during the 50s and 60s, you went to a race and you wanted to go in the paddock to see the drivers and whatnot, and you simply bought a pass.
Wow. I mean, I
think at the Gold Cup, that first race, I think a paddock pass, I think, was 10 shillings, 50p, and in I walked, and they were all my heroes, and of course not hidden away in motorhomes because they didn't exist.
No, just wandering up and down, or just like doing their thing, and
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Which is obviously so far removed from what we see today, where you can't get within 5 miles of, say, Silverstone on Grand Prix weekend unless you have a whole ton of money and all the passes under the world. Sorry, in the world even. So I mean, I hope I'm not wrongly assuming here, but I mean, did you want to be a racing driver first? Because I think at some point we all did, didn't we?
Well, yeah. Absolutely, yes. I mean, I think when I was sort of 12 or 13, it never crossed my mind I wouldn't be.
But that's it.
Reality strikes, and I later on, when I was sort of 18, 20, there used to be a motor racing school at Brands Hatch called Motor Racing Stables, and I went there loads of times, just driving Formula Ford cars and whatnot. And I very much enjoyed it, but I just sort of thought, well, I can't afford to. I can't afford to get into it, and what I've always said to myself is that if I'd wanted it enough somehow, I would have got there. And obviously, I just didn't want it enough. But I did. All I did know that somehow I wanted to spend my life around Formula One.
Yeah, you wanted to be involved somehow.
Yeah.
And obviously, you actually, I did see a question here, which I'm going to come into. People know their stuff tuning into here. Simon Steele, hello, Simon. He says, just while we're in your youth, he says, so which subjects did Nigel enjoy at Giggleswick School? He knows his stuff, eh?
Well, mainly English.
Yeah.
I never had the tiniest interest in science, any of the sciences.
Right.
Which in fact followed me all the way through my life in Formula One.
Sure.
So yes, English. So that was really the next step. When I left school, I worked in industry for 6 years and hated every second of it. But then there was always at the back of my mind that I've somehow got to get into racing somehow.
Yeah.
So in fact, what happened was in the middle of 1970, I resigned from my job, sort of trying to put myself in a position really where I had to do something about it. And that was when I started the rather thankless task of writing to the magazines and saying, any jobs going? And back came the replies saying, well, you can start. I remember I had a letter from Simon Taylor, who later became a great friend of mine.
Yes, Simon's been on here last year. And what a lovely chap.
Absolutely.
Lovely chap.
I wrote this letter to them and sort of said this is what I wanted to do. And I got a letter back, nice letter back, but essentially what he was saying was, I'd said, my interest was in Formula One. And the letter said, well, why don't we start off with Liddon Hill? Was the tone of the letter, and I could go and cover club races at Liddon Hill, for which they would pay me, I think it was either £6 or 6 guineas. So that didn't appeal at all. I'm afraid I'm not one of those people who've ever been terribly interested in club racing. I love it for the people who do it, but I don't find it terribly wonderful to watch.
No,
I'm afraid. Fair
enough.
So then, in kind of almost desperation, I wrote to Car and Driver in New York because I just noticed they didn't have a European racing correspondent at that time. And I was just terribly fortunate. My letter landed on the desk of a girl called Caroline Hadley, who was the managing editor, who was English, had been born in England. And God knows how many letters like that magazines get. And I'm sure most get slung in the bin. But in fact, she wrote back. This was in the spring of '71. And she wrote back, and I still have the letter somewhere. And essentially what she was saying was, well, if you think you're so clever, go to Barcelona, which was in April '71, write us a report, and if we like it, we'll use it, and if we use it, we'll pay you.
Wow.
So in other words, that was, it was kind of a wing and a prayer thing, and I just set off knowing nobody.
That's fantastic. I love that. I did read, there was an article somewhere online which I pulled a bit of information from, and basically the person who wrote the article, I'm not sure how true this is, but he said he reported back that you, even now, were a little shocked at your own audacity to say your articles are no good.
Yeah, the thing was, her reply took me by surprise because I expected it to be the same as all the others.
Sure.
And in fact, the best thing that happened to me was shortly before that, 2 or 3 weeks, there were loads of non-championship Formula One races in those days. And on Good Friday, there was a meeting at Oulton Park. Well, and of course, I went. But I thought, well, this is coming up in 2 or 3 weeks. I need help. I don't even know how to get a pass. And for whatever reason, I decided the most likely person probably to help me would be Rob Walker.
Right.
So I went up to him in practice and sort of briefly explained my predicament. And of course, Rob was the most charming man anybody ever met. And he told me where I should go to apply for a pass. Gave me loads of advice. And I came away from the conversation sort of lightheaded that, wow, I'm on my way. So, I know somebody now.
Yeah.
But it was an enormous help. And I drove to Barcelona in one hit from Regent's Park Road.
Wow, that's not a short trip for those who know.
Not a short trip. No, but it had a kind of unreal feeling about it. I remember stopping just after going over the border into Spain. It was about 2 a.m, and I stopped at a bar, because the bar's still open at that time in Spain, just for a coffee and a sandwich and whatnot. But as I drew up outside this bar, there was the Ferrari Transporter.
Right.
Amazingly. So I walked in, and all the mechanics were in there. So I got my coffee, and Borsari was there. Giulio Borsari was the legendary Ferrari mechanic.
The mechanic, yeah.
Yes. So I just very hesitantly and shyly sort of introduced myself and said I was, hoping to do this full time, and he was lovely, absolutely charming.
Wow.
I left with them, but he beckoned me over to the Transporter, and handed me a 1967 to 70 Ferrari yearbook, which you can't buy.
Yeah,
just a private publication by Ferrari. A lovely thing.
Wow.
I set off on my way again. Absolutely, you can imagine. I was on a cloud.
You must have been absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
And then
Fabulous.
Just to finish the story about basketball, I on the first morning of practice, session finished, and I thought I really ought to go and find Rob to thank him for the help he's given me so far, because I got my pass and everything else. And I found him and said, Mr. Walker, I'm so grateful to you. And Rob, being Rob, said, well, Nigel, if you're going to be doing this full time, you better meet everybody. And he spent an hour taking me around the paddock, introducing me to the Formula One paddock.
Wow.
Imagine, it's inconceivable anything like that could happen now.
Yeah, it's like...
I remember, for instance, we got to Lotus, and there was Colin Chapman talking to Emerson. And Rob just said, Colin, would you leave that for a minute and come meet somebody? And he did. So it was such a different world, from how it is now. So in the course of maybe an hour and a half, I met virtually everyone of consequence in Formula One.
Wow. Was it difficult at the time? Because I still find this when I meet people just through doing this. I find myself kind of hanging on every word they say, but also a part of my brain going, that's him. He's right in front of you. He's talking to you. He's giving you, and it's very hard to kind of separate the two parts of the brain.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And I saw in the notes there was like Chris Amon was there and loads of other people as well.
Well, in fact, I mean, of course, Chris was one of the people I met, that morning. And I remember when we got to Matra, Rob said, "Now, Nigel, you're going to meet Chris Amon, the nicest chap in the business you will ever meet." And in fact, my experience, that was the case.
Wow, that's amazing. And I forget who did I speak with? I forget who it was I spoke with. But yeah, he basically everyone who's ever met Chris Amon has said the same thing. Just the loveliest guy, and people of my age know him as probably the best racer to have never won a Grand Prix through sheer rotten luck all the time.
That's, I'm afraid, what he was stuck with. Like, Sterling was the greatest never to have been won the World Championship.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, what does all that mean? Christ's sake! I mean, not many. There have been very, very few drivers ever on par with Sterling. And you look at some of the people who did win the championship. You think, well, is it worth that much?
Yeah.
So, I mean, in the same way, Formula One, Pastor Maldonado won a Grand Prix.
Yes.
And Chris Amon never did. So makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, obviously nothing against Pastor, because he's far better than I'll ever be. But it's just some things go some ways and other days they go the other. And but what an incredible experience to have done that. And obviously the first race you ever covered and basically got paid for was a Formula One Grand Prix at Montjuic. I mean, it's not too bad, is it?
No. I mean, you're quite right.
Incredible.
I mean, sometimes I think, I think back to it myself and think almost sort of, did it really happen like that? But it did.
Yeah.
But Rob was the kind of icing on the cake because, I mean, being introduced by Rob to everybody on my first day. I mean, you can't buy that.
No, I mean, that's more than you could ever kind of hope for. Well, you can hope for it, can't you? But you certainly don't expect it. Wow. That's incredible. And when did you, obviously you did your report on the race and everything and sent it off and everything. When and how did you find out that it was a success and they liked it and the readers liked it and you were going to be taken on for, say, the rest of the year?
Yeah, I mean, fairly quickly. Fairly quickly. I mean, they when they got the report, they said they liked it. Then later on, they said, that the readers had responded well to it and all the rest of it. So yeah, as you say, so that was. Then I spent the rest of 71 working for Car and Driver.
Yeah, and you were there for basically the rest of the year, as you say. Then I got here that you switched over to was it a competition car, wasn't it? Was the next stop?
It was a lovely project. It was that, and in fact, that came about because through Car and Driver, we were getting to know everybody on the magazine in New York, and through the year, they said to me, I went. At the end of the year, of course, I went to America for the first time for the Grand Prix at Watkins Glen.
Oh, wow.
And I was in New York for a few days before going there. Spent a lot of time with the Car and Driver people, and they said to me, "Oh, you really must come to the Daytona 500. Something completely different. That you've never seen it before. You really." So that was what I did in '72.
Wow.
That was what I did, and I mean, again, it was faintly surreal because I got myself to New York and met up with the Car and Driver people, and I flew down to the race, down to Daytona on a private plane.
Very nice.
On which they were traveling, so I just got a ride on it. But so that was my first sight of NASCAR, obviously. And immediately prior to going, I met a couple of guys in London, Justin Haler and Chris Whitty, who were starting this new magazine called Competition Car. I said I was going to Daytona, And I remember they said, "Well, we'll write a story about it, and we'll run it." So
Wow.
so I did. And from that, it led to the offer of a job on the magazine.
I see.
It
Right.
was like a kind of university magazine. We were all
Right.
very young and completely irreverent. There was
Yes. Young and keen.
very little money around. We weren't paid very much at all, and it was a struggle, getting money getting a few quid together to go to a race. For them to pay, but it was enormous fun. I mean, we were all about that age, and we were all just living on enthusiasm.
Oh, I love that. I mean, just on that, I mean, like the Daytona 500 is the next thing on my bucket list. I'd love to go. I've done the Indy 500. I'd love to go to it. 72. That was AJ Foyt, I think, wasn't it? Was it Foyt? I think.
Yeah.
I don't know where that came from, but I did. Yeah.
No, big battle with Richard Petty, and then Petty retired, and AJ won. It was the only time he ever won it.
Yes, it was. Yeah. Hugely underrated on the global sense, AJ Foyt. You mentioned Chris Whitty there. Chris is actually tuning in. Chris has been on here, and he's become a very good friend and a good help to me. And Chris actually did put a comment in. Sorry, I should say hello to Chris. Haven't seen him for a while. But Chris is here. We like Chris. Who doesn't love Chris Whitty? He's a lovely chap. Yeah. And he said that, and he did comment saying Nigel was taught by Russell Harty, I believe. I don't know how true that is.
I was.
There you go. And he did.
He was I had, in the sixth form at school, I had two English masters who could not have been more different. One was a sort of ex-Indian Army. We didn't get on. He said to me one day, "Roebuck, if you were burning in the fires of hell, I would not spit to put the flames out." I've never forgotten that. But the other was Russell, and my last report at school. This is the sort of man he was. He put in the thing. His work has been good this term. But as ever, everything has been covered by a thin film of Castrol. Well, you don't get many schoolmasters who come up with stuff like that.
That's a beautiful way of putting it, isn't it?
But he was
bordering on obsession with motorsport. Yeah.
Yeah, he was. Oddly enough, it's a funny thing. I recently saw a photograph of the front of the school. In fact, it was the prep school at the time, and it's like everybody remembers where they were when they heard about Kennedy being assassinated, which is true. But in the same way, I looked at the photograph and I could point literally to the centimetre. That's where I was when Russell told me Luigi Musso had been killed at Reims.
Oh wow!
So memories, he was a wonderful, wonderful bloke, but probably the funniest man I've ever met in my life. Anyway, yeah,
it's lovely to hear.
Yeah,
lovely to hear. Yeah. Oh, I just spotted Chris Whitty has just written hi guys, so he's saying hello. Hello, Chris. So just while we're on that, I did get a message from two people earlier on today who said they can't tune in, and they both send their regards. One is Mr. Brian Redmond, a very lovely Brian Redmond.
Lovely Brian.
Yeah. Currently out in the States, he's probably doing. He's probably still driving around in something this afternoon in Florida, and Stuart Dent as well.
Oh, right.
Stuart sends his regards.
And my back to Stuart.
So that's lovely. So guys, I'm sure you'll have seen this back. So that's wonderful. Just very quick on your time around that time, was it? Excuse me. Competition car. I did read this. Is this true? You gave a certain Morris Hamilton a bit of a break or a shoe up.
Yeah, it is true.
In the world.
He
super.
A piece came in. I can't actually remember the precise timings of it now, all these years later. Whether Morris turned up at the office with it or whether he simply sent it in, I don't know. But anyway, he'd been to Monaco, the race at Monaco, and just sat down and written a piece about his trip. And it was exceptionally good. It was a lovely piece of writing. So I just thought, well, got to use this bloke. He's
this guy's got something.
Absolutely, and we remain friends to this day.
Oh, that's lovely. I love hearing little stories like that. So, guys, I have seen the comments coming in. People are talking. I want to hear some thoughts about Vittorio Brambilla, which we'll come to, and all kinds of things about the current day F1, things like that, guys. We're going to come to that very, very shortly. Do stay with. There's some good stuff coming in between. Unfortunately, shortly after you left, was a competition car folded, but you linked up with. Was it Quentin Spurring, wasn't it? And you did a bit of for the PR with Embassy Hill and Graham Hill's team and all that kind of.
Quentin had been the editor of, but he'd formerly been the editor of Autosport, and then became the editor of Competition Car. But I mean, in fact, he left Competition Car before I did, and he had set up this company called Motor Racing News Service. And he got the contract to do the PR for Graham Hill's Embassy sponsored team, and so he invited me to go in with him, and that I did.
And I just say you kind of went in there, did some PR work with them. This was sort of 74.
74-5, yes.
74, 75, and you did a lot of work, being involved directly with the team, I guess, for the first time, I guess. And was it a slightly different kind of dynamic, or was it just
it was a totally
just like doing what you were doing?
No, it was a totally different. And I was doing that sort of part of the time, and also and writing freelance, stories for magazines at the same time. It was interesting. I think it was enough for me to convince me that whatever else I wanted to do with my life, PR wasn't it.
Right.
It was not me at all. And but I mean, I have to say,
too many people involved.
This was 50 years ago. PR in Formula One was absolutely in its infancy. It's not like the overwhelming presence it is today.
Yes.
Yes. And there wasn't really that much involved, apart from things such as writing press releases, and but you weren't sort of forever trying to keep an eye on the driver or anything like that, which is how it is now.
Yes, it is. It's trying to what they have and who has access to them and what they have access to and all that other kind of nonsense that goes on. I won't say easier, but maybe a little less complicated, perhaps, back then. And I guess that you had a few dealings with Graham Hill, and everyone sort of has heard the stories about Graham Hill, and actually what a terrific racer and a stand-up chap generally.
By the time Q and I were involved in him, Graham sadly was one of those people who went on racing too long. For his own, I mean, I don't suppose it did any permanent damage to his legacy, but it certainly didn't help it. Because having been, a great driver who won a lot of Grand Prix on merit, to see him as an also-ran, it wasn't very pleasant. And I never understood how it didn't strike him earlier than it did. This. I mean, he did eventually see it and say, okay, from now on, my priority is running the team, and I'm giving up driving. But I wish he'd done it earlier than he did.
Yeah, sure. And I guess with hindsight from the outside, or not the outside looking in, but from the third person, it's kind of easy to say, I suppose. But I guess when you're that guy and you've been that guy, you kind of want to hang on as long as you can, perhaps.
Yes.
But and obviously we know what happened with Graham and with Tony Bryce and the rest of the crew. Excuse me.
Sorry, I'm just plugging in the iPad. It's
No, that's okay.
about to expire.
No, that's all right. No problem. But no, it's with what happened with Graham and with Tony Bryce and the rest of the crew and that fateful approach to Elstree Airfield. That must have been a huge shock, a hugely difficult time as well for everyone.
Yes, it was. That Saturday evening, I'll never forget. It kind of sticks in my mind. And it was one of those. It was ferociously cold. It was sort of something like 5-7 degrees below. And I remember there was a news flash. Just talking about a private aircraft that had crashed at Elstree. And that really rang a bell because I knew they had been testing at Ricard and I knew they were coming back from Nice. Sorry, from Marseille, not from Nice, from Marseille. That evening, and then as soon as I'd heard the news flash, the phone rang, and it was actually Chris Amon, and he just said, "Have you heard the news?" And I said, "Yes," and he said, "I think it's Graham," and I said, "Yeah, I think you're right. I'd had exactly the same thought."
Wow.
So yeah, it was I don't know what to say. Of course, it was a terrible time. I mean,
Sure.
I think they were on consecutive days. I think I went to Tony's funeral one day and Graham's the next. I think
Wow.
that. And poor Betty went to the funerals of everybody who'd been killed on the airplane, including, of course, her husband.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, obviously, people of my age.
Things like that don't very often happen, thank God, in a sort of fairly close-knit society like Formula One, and like it was much more then than it is now, in fact. It was a much more. There was, it was far more a family 50 years ago than it is now.
Yeah, for sure. And people of kind of my era, we've all read about it, and whenever I speak to guys or people that were around at the time, it kind of makes it a lot more real for guys who obviously I wasn't even alive at the time, and incredibly difficult kind of time. Just very quickly though, I have seen actually tuning in on YouTube is a certain David Tremaine. Hello, David. How very lovely to have you on board. I caught up with David a few weeks ago for lunch. David, you probably missed the start, but I did say that Nigel being on here, it's all your fault. But thank you very much, David. You're tuning in, and he just said Roebuck in big letters. Told you you'd enjoy it. Hi, Rich. DT.
Yeah, DT, as always.
Yeah, great stuff. David, we're going to give you another mention in a wee while. And I have seen. Oh, Harry Hazelmere said the famous five: Alan, Owen, David, Morrison, Nigel. Alan and Owen sadly no longer with us. This is my best wishes, Nigel. And then he says Les Thacker. I spoke with Les.
Sorry, carry on.
There's a chap called Harry Hazelmere has written in on Facebook, but and he's just put Les Thacker's name at the end. And I spoke with Les a few weeks back, and I hope Les is doing very well as well. But just quickly on where we were around that time, obviously very difficult time. But you joined Autosport just prior to the departure of Pete Lyons, who was heading up the F1 side of things. How did all that come about? Joining Autosport?
Well, they just simply. I just got in touch and offered me the job of sports editor.
Simple as that.
Which I was very happy to accept. I mean, it didn't involve any Formula One. I mean, it was an office job. I mean, I was responsible for all the, not just Formula One, but all the sort of racing coverage in the in the magazine, the news particularly. And then about it can't have been more than a month after I went there, the news came through that Pete had decided 4 years in Europe was enough, and he didn't want to do Formula One anymore, and so I was lucky. It just kind of, I don't know, kind of fell naturally to me. And so, from the beginning of 77, that was what I was doing.
Wow. And I've got in my notes here because there was so much I could go into with autosport. I mean, you were there for for so long, and you did so many wonderful pieces. And I said I've still got a big stack of autosport somewhere. I remember one with like Mansell Magic on the front of it and all that kind of stuff in the 80s. But
really,
yeah,
okay,
still got them.
Well, he did produce.
They're still there.
For all his other peccadillos, he did quite often, in fact, produce magic. So I can't.
Yeah, every now and again. And I'm glad that you kind of hinted at something there, because the amount of people because Nigel Mansell was my guy. I'm not too far from Didcot where Williams were based. They were always my team. Mansell was my guy, and I've always had a smile on my face when people like David or Chris Whitty or Frank Durney, they've basically said that Nigel was a pain in the bum to work with. And I always found that rather amusing.
No, it could be. Absolutely, yeah, it could. But other days, the nicest guy you ever met. And in fairness, I mean, all through what you would sort of talk about, these great years, the sort of let's say 85 to 94, I guess. Certainly through the 80s, he was about the best interview you would ever find. Because even for the time, he said exactly what he thought.
Yes.
And which is increasingly rare now, obviously, but
you're not allowed to now,
even for the time, he was pretty outspoken. So I mean, interviewing was always a pleasure because you never quite knew what he was going to come up with next. I'm not being. That's a compliment. I mean, I really enjoyed interviewing. We did have some problems later on. It seemed to me after his period at Ferrari, when he went back to Williams, it just seemed to me that his his arrogance was off the scale. But maybe I don't mean that, but I mean, he wrote. I mean, I remember writing a piece about that. I thought at the top of the tree, Prost and Senna were on their own. I thought they were. Yeah. And I think history shows the way, the rivalry they had and everything else. I think both Anna and Ayrton never really worried about anybody else. Not terribly much. I think, yes, certainly Nigel bothered them occasionally and very often beat them. But I think in terms of how they regarded themselves and their own abilities, I don't think they put anybody else on their level.
No.
And frankly, neither did I. I think most people did. I think we both saw those two as the twin pillars. And I remember writing a piece saying that I thought those two were the best. And Nigel was terribly upset that I hadn't ranked him with them. And we did have a bit of a difficult time for quite a while. I mean, it patched it all up in the end, I'm about to say. I mean, I haven't seen him for quite a while, but we have no problem with each other now. But for a time, it was testy, let's say.
Yes, that's a good word. I like that. I want to come to Nigel in just a little bit, but because he was unlucky in '86 and '87, but history has shown that Ayrton and Alan were perhaps correct. I want to come to that very shortly. Our friend Barry out in the States. Hi, Barry. Says, what was it, Nigel, who said Nigel has a problem for every solution? That's a great line.
It did seem like that. There were times when it.
Yeah. That's great. I have read that somewhere. Just quickly though, just hopping back quickly, just to autosport, because it kind of evolved and it became, I mean, certainly for me, it was my motorsport kind of Bible as a kid growing up. I was born in 81. It was my kind of, as I say, it was my Bible. It was my go-to. It was how I found out what was going on in the world of motorsport, and it helped shape all this stuff that's on the walls now. And I mean, one thing that became a real staple and a real fan favorite was your fifth column, and I know people have been putting the comments in about your fifth column. Chris Hall said on YouTube, he said, I always look forward to the fifth column and hoping to hear some Brambilla stories, which we'll come to. People saying great days of autosport dropping through the door on a Thursday, and fifth column was, you know, the favorite piece and things like that. I mean, it was something that you kind of made sure happened, I think, from an email that we had yesterday, wasn't it? And it was just a terrific feature.
Yeah, I mean, I just
for all of us.
I just wanted an opportunity to whatever, you know, talk or elaborate on things, talk about things, you know, that had come out of the, particularly if there'd been a race that, you know, that had come out of the Grand Prix weekend. But even failing that, you know, the year round, I mean, there was always something happening. There were every week, even in December, you know, there something would crop up. There would be something, and I really enjoyed that. I love that. I loved the sort of instant aspect of it. This, you know, this happened on Saturday, and here it is Monday, and I'm writing about it, and this is what I think. So it was
kind of fresh.
It was just fun, you know. It was, and yes, it was. Of course, you know, it was very opinionated. But I thought it should be. I thought.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's absolutely no point in time. There's no point whatever in writing and being a writer unless you say what you think. So
yeah, I mean, I must admit, I say that I write articles on things. I try and keep it as middle of the road as I can, because you get a lot of grief on social media these days, and it's not really my kind of scene. But I always try and put a little twist on it. I try and put my thoughts across on it as well, and people yell at me for it, but I don't care, really. But it was just a wonderful thing. As I said, you could kind of be you and be your, and put your opinion across because you felt strongly about it, or that's how you saw things. And I think that's what everyone loved about it. I've just seen someone on YouTube with the handle @Don'tLiftOff. What a terrific YouTube name that is. He said that you were the journalist that he most looked forward to reading every week in autosport in the 90s in the fifth column. So yeah,
thank you.
It certainly struck a chord with everyone.
Good.
Which is fantastic. And
probably lucky that it ran when it ran. I mean, as one who's never touched social media and never will.
I always said that, and then this happened.
I probably sidestepped a lot of abuse.
Yes. Yeah. People are very, from behind a screen, people can say all kinds of nonsense. But yeah, I always said I wasn't going to do social media, and yet here I am.
It's easy to be brave when your name's not on it. You know.
Yes, exactly. And there's
anonymity. I mean, which was, I mean, that was just going back to fifth column. I mean, it had its moments. It had its difficult moments because I mean, I did occasionally write things that people in the paddock did get a bit upset about. But I can't ever remember anything that wasn't relatively simply resolved. And it wasn't. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't sort of social media and death threats and all that.
Yes, I mean, it hasn't quite gone that far with me. I was compared to Hitler once, which I thought that's really nice. Well, so that was lovely. But that's the thing, you're not allowed an opinion these days, so you kind of have to dial it back a bit. But it was great that
you're allowed an opinion. It's an opinion that's acceptable to these people.
Yes.
What you're not allowed to do is disagree with them.
Oh no, definitely not. No, never do that.
You get cancelled.
Yeah, but fifth column was always. I think it just always was done like the right way with opinions and how it was dealt with and everything else like that. It was just a terrific thing, and lots of love coming in the comments. And I just want to say, Jeff Bloxham, hello, Jeff, said loved your Tuesday morning conversations with Alan Henry. He said that he loved your Tuesday morning conversations with Alan Henry, gloating about Autosport having a day more to get the latest stories. Yes.
Dear old Alan.
No, just tremendous stuff. I mean, there's so much. I need to look at the time because basically there's a lot of things that people are referencing and things that I wanted to touch on as well. Also, we've got to talk about like Motorsport magazine as well. You know, the kind of relaunch, the rebirth of it. It was very well received globally, and I'm in regular contact with Matt Bishop, who knows a thing or two about Motorsport magazine. What was the what's the word? Not the process, or the thought process behind the kind of like the relaunch and pushing it again and getting it back out there and back to what it was before?
Well, I'm not so sure there was much of a thought process, frankly. I think it was
Right.
There was. I mean,
Great.
It had frankly sunk pretty low. In lots of respects, it didn't look particularly nice. It was just kind of flat. That was how it felt to me whenever I saw it. And so, I mean, for a long time, it looked as though it would just disappear, it would just die. And then it was, most fortunately, was bought by a rich man who had loved the magazine all his life. And I mean, I always felt it was a kind of present to himself. But that was when the rebirth of the magazine started, if you like.
Right.
There was money was injected, there were staff changes, there was all this and that, there were all kinds of changes. And I think, I still think, I think I worked there nearly 10 years, and I'm looking back, I'm proud of those and looking at those issues now and thinking, yeah, it was a pretty good magazine. It still is.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, excuse me, I think from where it, as you say, from where it had gone to, from what it had been to where it had got to where it got back to, I think it was a remarkable upturn. Thanks to guys like yourself.
Yeah. Well,
which is
sort of
it's like a nice thing to have. Just a quick one. Facebook. Robert FH. Hello, Robert. He says, what was Jenks like to work with? Brackets in the trade.
Oh, Jenks. Ye gods. And Jenks is a program on his own. He I
wasn't going to mention it too much, but yeah.
He where do I start? He was, I suppose before I was involved in racing, from being a kid, I always read Autosport, I always read Motorsport. And particularly, I used to devour Jenks's Grand Prix reports and so on, because Formula One, the races were hardly ever on television. And you would get the results and a few words in the day in the newspapers, but no real detail. So you were in those days reliant on the magazines to sort of find out, what had happened. Autosport's Formula One coverage was sort of, I always thought was, okay, but not fantastic. But for a really detailed report of what had happened at Monza or Spa or wherever it was, you had to read Motorsport, and that meant Jenks. So I was lucky. Not everybody got on with Jenks. I got on with Jenks famously, from the word go, for whatever reason. But we just got on, and that was that. Yes. But I mean, I often think back. I can think back to school days. For some reason, there used to be copies of Reader's Digest around the place. I don't know if everybody remembers Reader's Digest now, but there was,
Yeah, the little
yeah. But there was one page every month called "The Most Eccentric Person I Ever Met."
Right.
And if I had been writing that, I wouldn't have hesitated for a second. Before Jenks, I mean, he was on another level. I mean, there he was. I mean, Jenks died in 1996. To the day he died, he never had electricity in his house. People don't believe that. They don't believe that, but it's true.
Really?
He had a Honda generator that provided light for one room at a time. It's true. It's true.
Fantastic.
And if you were there in the evening and somebody wanted to go for a pee and needed the light in the bathroom, the rest of you had to sit just in blackness until they got back. Of course,
there's a lovely simplicity about that, isn't there?
Yeah. But I mean, people don't believe that in the 90s there was somebody living without electricity, but that was him.
That's
fantastic. And he wandered around the house, and there'd be, engines in his bedroom, and it was beyond. I mean, he was another species almost. I remember Alan Henry went there one day. They were going out on a road test. They were going to test a Ferrari Testarossa. They were spending the day in this one lovely car. Jenks said to him, "Come for breakfast." So Alan arrived there at whatever time it was. Jenks said, "Do you want a poached egg?" So Alan said, "Yes, thank you." So Jenks put 2 eggs in and poached them and put one on a plate, knife and fork, gave it to Alan. And then the other egg he flipped out onto the draining board and proceeded to eat it from the draining board. And Alan, in his innocence, said to him, "Jenks, why don't you use a plate?" And he said, "Well, you've got it."
He's got one.
Was it? So, I mean, this was the most unusual life he led.
Oh, that's brilliant! But who wants a normal life? I mean, and you have to love an eccentric. Any eccentric
he was beyond eccentric. He
is all good in my book.
Really was. But
wonderful.
But I could talk to him about racing. I mean, I could talk to him for hours and hours and hours about it. And you would never. He had his opinions, and you would never shift him from them.
That was Which, I mean, that's lovely to hear, but which again is something you're not allowed to have these days. And I just want to touch on something, because obviously you guys, you were proper old school, proper journalists who gave your opinion on what you'd seen and what was going on and things like that. Now it's all AI generated lies and rubbish, and people trying to just sort of get attention for the sake of getting attention. But that's not what you guys did. You did it properly, isn't it?
The other thing that really gets me now is that you see a headline on some website, and it'll say Hamilton replaced by Ferrari at whichever race is coming up. You think, so you look at the headline, you think, "Oh, wow,
crikey, what's going on?"
You read the story, and of course it's about somebody else being in his car for FP1, an up and coming.
Yes, yeah. Well, but there was one that I saw
that's completely misleading, giving the impression that Lewis has got the boot.
I mean, there was one that really got me recently. Andrea Di Adamic very sadly passed away. I believe it was last week. And there was a headline on something on somewhere on the internet, and it was driver involved in worst ever F1 crash. No, driver injured in worst ever F1 crash passes away. And you think, "Oh my God, what the hell's happened?" And it was referencing the Scheckter incident at Silverstone and the fact that Andrea broke his leg, but he died
Right.
52 years later.
Was the worst ever Formula One crash, did they?
Apparently so. Yes, that was the worst one ever because there was lots of cars involved. You know, and I read that, and I actually went on there and put a comment saying, I've just, just to save you the sensationalism in 5 minutes of your life, Andrea Diadamic died, aged 84, after a terrific innings, and he broke his leg in 1973.
Yeah, exactly.
And everyone's going, thanks for that.
That was the worst injury in the accident, a broken leg.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but it's just this. Someone's just put our good friend Barry on YouTube. He's just written clickbait. Ugh, exactly. That's what it's called, isn't it? It's people just getting attention, but it's attention for the sake of getting attention without even saying anything. But you guys, you got attention because what you said was correct, or at least mainly correct in your opinion, and you guys did it properly, and that's kind of lost now, isn't it? It's just this kind of wishy-washy kind of approach to things because of the social media and the anger that it feeds. Horrible. Just very quick, I think I spoke to David Tremaine about this when he came on. He was interviewee number 100, so David will always have that, which is very nice for him. But we're talking about like traveling and everything, because obviously he's written a great many terrific books, as have you. And he said to me that people perceive traveling for F1 and being within F1 and all this kind of thing as being very glamorous and a wonderful way to live. And David just said a lot of the time it was a real pain in the backside. I mean, how did you kind of find it? It was your job and you loved it, but
yeah, I mean, it was 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. I mean, superficially, certainly. I mean, yes, it was a very glamorous way to make a living. You were traveling all the time, going to some places horrible, some places wonderful. Yes. But in the end, I mean, Christ's sake, you were being paid to write about what you loved, so you can't really knock that.
Yeah.
But the other side of it was, I mean, something always sticks in my mind actually is we were at Detroit in 85, I think it was 85. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was 85. Anyway, Keke won the race. Keke Rosberg race. And we flew back that night from Detroit. And I was traveling with my great pal, Alan Henry. So on the aeroplane, and Keke gets on, and Keke being Keke, he was in economy with us. And
that's no surprise.
Yeah, Keke always had this attitude that whichever class you're in, the aeroplane is going to the same place and getting there at the same time. And he said, all I need from an aeroplane is somewhere I can sleep and somewhere I can smoke. Different times. Anyway, so Keke was with us in economy, and all the way back from Detroit, all that night on the aeroplane. And this, God help us, was in the typewriter days. So we're clacking away. Must have driven a lot of people around the bend. But essentially what I'm saying is Alan and I wrote our reports on the aeroplane overnight. And it took all.
Wow.
And then we landed at Heathrow and we went to our respective offices.
Wow.
So
that's cool.
There's that side of it too, you see. Well, I mean, there's nothing glamorous about that at all, sitting in economy with no space on a typewriter on your little table like this, and trying to write something, half worth reading when you're dog tired and Mr. Rosberg is across from me, of course, fast asleep, waking up occasionally for a fag and then going back to sleep again. But I remember when we got to Heathrow, we were getting off the plane, and here's Keke, who's just won the Grand Prix the day before, and he said, "You guys, I don't know how on earth you've just done that. I couldn't do that in 100 years." sit up
Wow.
all night. And I mean, it was a compliment, and we took it as a compliment.
Yeah,
but
absolutely. Yeah.
But that was the other side of the coin. That was there was, trust me, nothing glamorous about that at all. But
sure.
it was just all part of it. Anyway.
Yeah. No, love that. All the things that we've ever, well, not ever that we've ever read, but all the things that we've read, folks, have been written overnight, hurtling over the Atlantic by some bleary-eyed people.
Not all. I mean, but races like American races, the time change against you and everything else. I mean, it had to be done when it was done. You couldn't sort of turn up at the office the next morning and start.
Yeah, because you'd be wiped out.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. Right, we've got a lot of people asking me to ask you about certain drivers. We're going to come to in just a second. Something I did read though, and I just want to get your a bit more sort of meat on the bones here. A bit more recent. It was 2008. I believe you had a bit of not an incident, but a little quirk of Bernie Ecclestone when you decided that you didn't want to go to, was it Interlagos, and you said you were kind of relieved at not having to go. And Bernie played a little trick on you.
First thing I should say is that Interlagos, I've always loved Interlagos as a racetrack. I was thinking last weekend, what is it about this place? You can go through a fairly sleepy Formula One season, but you get to Interlagos and it invariably produces a great race, and
the whole thing lights up,
and unexpected happenings and whatnot. But that said, I never liked being in Sao Paulo. I'm afraid I just didn't like it.
Quite a busy place, isn't it?
That's the end of it, yeah. And anyway, I won't get into that. So yes, I did ride in motorsport one week. That I wasn't going to Brazil this year, and I was quite happy about it. So that was that, and we came to, maybe it might have been the next race. Anyway, it was the first European race. It was Imola, and I get to them on the first morning, Friday morning. Practice, get to the turnstile, and hold up my pass, and it won't work. I can't get in the paddock, and so I thought, oh Jesus, what's happened? Everybody else's was working; they were going through, and mine wouldn't. And I don't remember the name. So many years since I've seen him. He was Bernie's Mr. Fix-It for years and years and years. And it'll probably come to me. Anyway, I managed to talk my way in, but only so far as going to see him. I seem to remember a couple of official guys came with me. And so anyway, I walked in and I just said, it's what the hell's happening? I've got my pass, it's always, my pass always works, it's not working. And he said, oh, well, we'll have to do you, we'll have to do you a temporary one, just for today, and give us time to sort it out. Of course, took over an hour. So I'm just, again, standing around, getting more and more angry. And eventually, I eventually get this pass, so I'm in for the day. But I'm furious about what's happened. And I guess this is what I mean about how Formula One has changed, in the sense that back then it still kind of had a kind of intimate corner shop feel to it. The paddock, everybody was familiar with everybody in that. And I was livid about this, so I was determined to to have it out with Bernie. So I went to Bernie's motorhome, and which you could do in those days, not now. Banged on the door, and this face appeared. Yeah, what do you want? So I went in, and I told him. I said, I've arrived this morning. I've got my bloody pass. Hold it up at the turnstile. It won't work. I've just waited an hour while they get me a temporary one. It's been time wasted. Bernie says to me, "Oh, yeah, well, there have been complaints." I said, "From whom?" The English Press Association. I said, "What the hell is the English Press Association? I've never heard of it." "Oh, yeah, it's a new thing. It's the bloke from the Daily Mail's organising it." So I said, "Well, I know nothing about it." "Well, there have been complaints." I said, "Well, what complaints?" "Well, you didn't go to Interlagos." I said, No, I didn't." And he said, well, the English Press Association is saying if you don't go to all the races, you can't come in for any of them. So I ranted and raved and all the rest of it. He said, "Well, you better sort it out with them." I just say it's the bloke from the Mail who's organising it. So I go off to the press room, and by now I'm livid. And I storm in and say, "What it's the English Press Association." And of course, everybody looks at me and say, "What? No.
What are you talking about?"
So this is why I'm saying this is why I will always, in my opinion, Formula One will always miss Bernie. That with the weight of running this enormous sport on his shoulders, and all that, he still had time to have a joke.
To play a joke on you, essentially.
Yeah. And I walked in the next morning, and my pass did work, and the little window on the turnstile had been programmed, and it just said, "You're forgiven."
Oh, that's terrific.
You're not.
That's great.
You're not going to have things like that with Liberty Media, I'm afraid.
No, it's all far too straight-laced. That's brilliant. I think a lot of the people from outside F1, they kind of see Bernie in a certain light, but everyone who's ever met him and has been inside the ropes with him, it's a completely different perception of him from what us mortals outside the ropes see. And it's lovely to hear.
Yeah, I was going to say, I never had a crossword with him. I did have a crossword with him a time or two, but I never had a falling out with him. That was as near as I ever came. And as I say, that was just an elaborate joke.
Yeah.
And as I say, I always loved the fact that as busy as he was, he still found time and thought it worthwhile, having that's something he'd read in my column.
Yeah, just have a little human side and have a just
and fundamentally, what I always thought about Bernie, and I will always say it, was whatever else, he made a huge amount of money out of racing, and good luck to him as far as I'm concerned. He deserved it. He set it on its way, but he was always absolutely a racer.
Yeah.
You could always talk to.
This is how he started, of course.
You could talk to Bernie for hours and hours and hours about, Gerhard Berger suffering, being Senna's teammate, and Mansell. He liked talking about Mansell, not always in a complimentary fashion, but he but it was always good fun, and it was always interesting. He wasn't doing it just because, I suppose I better talk about it for a few minutes. He loved talking about it. It's not like that now, I don't think.
Yeah. Well, no, it's all saying the right
in terms of the people who run it, it's not.
Yeah, I think in 15, 20 years, I think a lot of people will realise that, F1 needs Bernie Ecclestone, or certainly misses Bernie Ecclestone, and people might change their opinions of him for sure. Those of us outside the ropes. So I think these two comments here were regarding Bernie's right-hand man, go-to guy. Was it someone? Simon Steeler said, was it Pete McIntosh?
No.
Someone has said, was it Pasquale? Someone Pasquale.
Yeah, Pasquale. I can't remember his Christian his surname now, but yeah,
Pasquale.
Yes, it was Pasquale. Yeah.
Pasquale, right. So to Chris Hall 2211 on YouTube, you get a gold star for saying Pasquale. Well
Good for him.
Good on you. Well done.
He was an easy,
and I am
an easy fellow to forget, as far as I'm concerned. Anyway.
We'll put it that way. Fair enough. Just a couple of something you did sort of touch on. We need to talk about like team managers, and because you said you have a dislike for motorhomes for the reason that Bernie would opening the door and all that kind of stuff. But
but in fairness, I say, thing about Bernie's motorhome, I mean, it was, people used to call it the Kremlin and whatnot. But the thing is, you bang on the door, and Bernie came to the door, and whatever you wanted to talk about, he would talk about. He'd sort.
Yeah. Brilliant. Speaking of people in charge and everything, you did say in an email to me that you had some very fond memories of speaking with like Frank Williams and Ken Tyrrell, and there was another chap we mentioned. I can't remember who it was now. Yeah, you've also said that like with
Chapman. Probably Chapman.
Colin Chapman, of course it was. You generally got on well with all the team managers, and you said you had a particular like for Ken Tyrrell as well.
I did. Well, I mean, yes, Ken and Frank, particularly.
Yeah.
But I think it was. I think they were different in the sense that all those guys, they were team owners, they were team principals, whatever you want to call them. But the fact is, they were their teams. They had founded those teams.
Yes.
Yes. So they were the original actor managers, if you like. I mean, this was their game. And more to the point, they did it until Bernie came along. They did it for a long time, not making very much money out of it.
Yeah, they did it because they loved it.
They did it because they loved it. Yeah. And so they weren't. They didn't be. I mean, nowadays you get the impression with a lot of teams that it's almost as though each team has a chief executive. Whereas in those days it was just much more intimate. I mean, I used to spend time, for instance, if you can imagine this now, in the paddock, I'd be sitting with Ken, and Ken always had a transistor radio with him, and we'd be listening to a test match. And I used to sit there with him, and we'd have several cups of tea or coffee or glasses of wine or whatever. And while the test match was going on, and Ken needed to know to the second what was happening in the test match. And in the same way, I used to with Frank. All right, I mean, Frank was the original workaholic, as we know. But he used to ring me, and it's a sign of just how driven Frank was. Quite often on a Sunday morning, I'd be not a race weekend, so I'd be here, I'd be home, and the phone would ring, and there was a very, very high chance it would be Frank. Because Sunday morning, Frank Williams wasn't at home. Frank Williams was at the factory.
Yeah,
that was him. And
I
think he went in as much as anything else just by, it wasn't, I can't really call it habit. He was so driven by his team and the team succeeding and whatnot. That was where he felt he should be. But I'm sure on Sunday mornings he'd say he'd be in there with probably be a few other people in there too. But I quite often got the impression that he's sort of, well, I'm here and I haven't actually got anything really to do this morning. So I'm sure he then started ringing round.
Right.
And I just, for instance, remember one morning the phone ringing at about 10 or half past, and I picked it up and I said, hello. And the voice just said, Nigel, it's Frank. What do you think about Jensen Button? And that was when Jensen was very young and Frank was thinking of hiring him.
Right.
Now,
Yeah.
today, it seems to me inconceivable today now that a team owner would ring a journalist.
Would phone a journalist for an opinion,
To
yeah.
ask for their opinion about somebody they were thinking of hiring.
Wow.
Anyway,
And like that,
I mean,
and like that wasn't too long ago, was it?
no, and I'll give you another example of Frank. In what was this? It was 82. We had a couple of races at the start of the year, and then Carlos Reutemann instantly, it was an instant withdrawal from Formula One. And of course, this was at the time of the Falklands War.
Of course, yeah.
So
Argentina.
Paul Carlos was in a pretty untenable position. You know, he was an Argentine Formula One driver with a British team, and we were at war with Argentina. So Carlos instantly retired. Long Beach was coming up, and it still amazes me now to think back, because you wouldn't ever call Frank underconfident, or I wouldn't certainly.
Wow.
He rang me, and he said, Carlos has gone home. Carlos has retired. So I need a teammate for Keke at Long Beach. Do you think Mario would do it? And I said, well, knowing Mario, I'm sure he would. You know, Mario
drive anything.
He couldn't turn you down. So he said, okay. He said, would you mind ringing him for me?
Frank Williams got you to, wow.
I said, yes, of course I will, but why? And he said, well, you know, he was a friend of yours, you know him very well. And he said, to be honest with you, Nigel, I've always been a little bit overawed by Mario.
The amount of people that say that.
Well, so I said, but Mario, I said, Frank, you know, he's the most approachable guy in the world. I know. So anyway, he said, but well, if you do that for me, I'd really be grateful. So I did. So I was the kind of go-between in this. I rang Mario and I said, you know, Frank wants you to do Long Beach. Yeah, right, I'm there. You know, no problem. And he said, but Nigel, forgive me, but why are you ringing me about this? Why isn't, you know? Why? I said, well, it's difficult, Mario, but he's a bit shy, you know. And I mumbled, and so Mario says, well, tell him, and so he gave me this and that. So then I had to ring Frank back and pass it on. I just sort of thought, this is ridiculous. I'm a journalist, and I'm a go-between a team owner and a driver. Why the hell, you know, when they're not speaking face to face?
So like, what's happening?
Eventually they did, of course, but I'm just giving you an idea of it's. I mean, the only other thing, the only occasion that reminds me that's similar to that now, that I think I'm sure couldn't happen today. I remember at the beginning of 1974, on a Saturday evening, getting a phone call from Chris Amon, and this voice just came on the phone. And he said, Nigel, Ferrari have asked me to go back. What do you think? And again, you know, you sort of think of it now, ringing a journalist, you know, for A, letting on that this had happened, but B, what do you think? Do you think, should I do it? Is it a good idea? So, like I say, you know, inconceivable today.
Yeah. But again, that shows the trust that people have in you
Well,
about,
also, but
things that are going on.
it
And
also shows just how different the relationship in those
for sure.
was between. It was just much less rarefied than it is now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it amazes me to looking back on it, it amazes me that those things happened. When Chris Amon did his contract with Techno in 1973, I was there having lunch, and David York of Martini was due to arrive to negotiate the contract in the afternoon. So I said after the lunch, I said to Chris, "Well, I'll push off and leave you to it." And he, no, that's all right. So David arrived, and we sat down in the sitting room, the three of us. I mean, I'm just sort of there as a square peg, if you like, thinking, what the hell am I doing here? I mean, I'm not contributing anything.
Yeah.
And they just had their talk about, the contract with me just sitting there. Because I remember Chris saying very earnestly, they're talking about money, and Chris saying, well, David, I think it's got to be 70. And of course, 1973, that blew my mind. I was earning I was at Autosport earning 3,600.
Wow.
But 70,000 today, they wouldn't sign autographs for that.
Well, no, exactly.
But it still amazes me, though, as I say, that he was perfectly content to have this negotiation with me there.
Whereas now it would be such a closed room, inner circle, all the PA marketing and all the media, all that kind of thing. It just wouldn't happen. And just quickly on like Mario, as I said, Mario came on here 3 or 4 years ago, and I thought, oh, shall I ask him? I thought, no, don't be so stupid. There's no way he'd give up his time for free to come and talk to a bloke who's got a camera.
He would.
And he just went, yeah, of course, no problem. And just the loveliest guy. And he still sends me a WhatsApp message on Christmas just to say Merry Christmas. I'm just like,
yeah.
And just the loveliest guy who will drive. But it's the amount of people who are in awe of Mario, because I had Chip Ganassi on here, and I said to him, I admitted beforehand, I said, look, I'm a big fan, and I'm a bit nervous, basically. I've only ever been nervous talking to Jackie Hicks and Mario Andretti on here. And Chip Ganassi just went, I still get nervous talking to Mario now. And it is a complete leveler.
Yeah.
But everyone holds Mario in such a regard.
I know. And he is.
Yeah.
I mean, Martin Brundle said that to me. He said he always feels he's quietly sort of, wow, who am I talking to?
Yeah. There's just something about him, isn't there? He's just an amazing kind of guy.
He is, but I tell you, on the other side of him, I mean, perhaps maybe it's a tale I shouldn't tell, but it's just, it's always stuck in my mind. By complete chance, of course, our fathers died the same day.
Oh, right.
And
oh, goodness.
And I remember 2 or 3 days later, I didn't tell Mario, and he didn't tell me, but I heard about it from my American friends that Mario's father had died, and somebody told him. And I just remember the phone ringing, and I picked it up, and this voice just said, "Hey, it's Mario. Just thought you might want to talk." So
that's Mario.
Well, that's Mario, yes.
Yeah.
In my experience.
Just
Yeah.
Lovely chap. I mean, God, there's so many things I need to touch on. I mean, we've mentioned about Mario. There's a few other drivers I want to talk about, but firstly, our good friend David Tremaine popped on earlier on, and he wrote about the lost generation of like Bryson Williamson and Tom Price and things like that.
Yeah.
Plus, around that time, I don't like talking about this, but around that kind of era, we lost, like Piers Courage and Jochen Rindt, Joe Siffert, Francois Sever, Peter Rebs, and Helmut Koenig, Mark Donoghue, etc., etc. It must be, obviously, you kind of it was fairly commonplace at the time, but I guess it was never easy to write about that kind of thing. Did you ever kind of struggle to write about those kind of incidents, especially when they were so commonplace? Because I can imagine it would be very difficult, even though it was more commonplace than certainly it has been in the last 30 odd years. But did you ever kind of, I don't want to say struggle to find the right words because that's kind of almost a slur on what you do, but was it difficult at that time to be able to report on those kinds of losses?
Oddly enough, no, not for me. Not difficult.
Right.
Because I suppose because my first year of doing this was 71, and and that first year, I mean, I went to 2 memorial services that first year for Pedro Rodriguez and Joe Sifford. And I'd all my life really. I mean, as I've told you, Jean Barrow is my great childhood hero.
And he was lost at Avios, wasn't he?
He was killed at Avis in '59 when I was 13. And that was the first time in my life I ever came to, I had to confront grief.
Sure.
And it was grief. I was completely devastated.
Yeah. And I was the same age when Ayrton was lost, and it was the same.
Yeah. So, but it's very hard for me to put this into words. My father was a doctor, and as a young doctor in the war, he went into Belsen on the first day after the Germans left.
Yeah,
you can imagine what he found, and particularly as a doctor, what a young doctor, what he had to deal with.
Oh goodness!
So and that he never ever talked about it, like just once, very briefly, but otherwise wouldn't. But it did. It kind of affected the way he thought about things certainly in terms of motor racing. That remembering it was horrendously dangerous in those days, but his attitude was very much, well, it's part of it. I'm afraid that's the way it is. It's dangerous and people die and it's horrible, but it's a fact. And as I say, I always felt that some of the things he'd been through and some of the things he'd seen I don't say they made him sort of hard as nails or anything, but they did give him a realistic attitude, if you like. And when I was 10, we went to Alton Park to the British Empire Trophy, and there was a guy in the race, an American guy in the race. I think he was in the Navy. Actually, he was an attaché in London, and he had an Aston Martin DB3S in the American colours of white with blue stripes. And he crashed right in front of us. He hit a tree, and he was killed. And I was, as I say, I was 10. And I can remember my father wasn't hard about it at all. But I just remember on the drive home him just saying, "Listen, your passion's about this, but this is part of it. I'm afraid it always has been. It always will be.
And you have to get used to it almost."
Well, the thing is, I mean, not now. God knows it. Thank God, it's entirely different now. But when I started covering it, it was hugely dangerous still in the 70s. So, back then, when it happened, it was always a shock. Of course, it was, but somehow it wasn't really a surprise. It was always there in the background as this could happen, and it could happen this weekend or next weekend or whatever. So I for whatever reason, no, I never found it terribly
Mm.
hard to write about, because I was just trying to describe, what I'd seen
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and what I'd felt.
And you'd almost been around it, almost not around it all the time, but it was always
Well,
present at quite a young age, I guess.
it was I guess the hardest for me was Gilles.
Yes, I did
Because,
see actually someone did write on the comments here. Robert Kiley said, "Can you ask Nigel about Gilles?" So this would be a good time to
okay,
speak about Gilles,
well,
if that's okay.
Gilles, that was the worst for sure for me. I would still say the worst day I've ever had at a racetrack. Because we were friends, and he was such an unforgettable character, but also because of the circumstances in which we'd a fortnight earlier had the race at Imola when Peroni conned him, duped him, and
Which you wrote
2
about, didn't
days.
you, in
Well, I
Fifth
did,
Column?
yeah. Because 2 days afterwards, I flew back on the Monday, and on the Tuesday morning, I rang him, and as I've always said to people, I never expect to have a conversation with a racing driver again like that in my life. It was I mean, I can remember when I said to him, have you talked to Peroni about it? And he just said, "No, I haven't, and I'm not going to talk to him again ever." And we go to Zolder. As far as I'm concerned, he might as well be in a Brabham or a Lotus
Yeah, he's not.
but there was about an hour of this, and he never raised his voice, but it was so. Oh Jesus! I came off the phone. I remember going up to the house and saying to my wife, "I've just had this conversation with Gilles. I'm so sorry for him, but Christ, it frightened me. It did frighten me.
Frightened you.
I've never heard a racing driver talk like that. Yeah.
Wow. Jeez. I mean,
I mean, I was, it was all on tape. I mean, he said it all, and I wrote the column about it. But it frightened me how upset he was,
how deeply it kind of got to him.
how betrayed he felt.
Yeah,
Course,
yeah.
We went to Zolder, and on the Friday, I remember he called me over. He was standing at the pit, called me over, and he just said, "Just read your column, and thank you for writing, my side of the story, and I really appreciate it."
Wow.
And then Peroni came into the pit, and that second, Gilles just went like this with his finger and go out of the back of the pit. "I'm not staying here with him."
Wow. So even, yeah.
And then, of course, the next day.
Yeah, we know what happened.
Yeah.
Goodness me. Wow. I mean, there's nothing I can add to that, is there?
No. I mean, that was.
Goodness.
It was almost. Once it had happened, I started to think there was almost a kind of awful inevitability about this.
Yeah. Something's going to happen.
Yeah. And I won't name him, but somebody in the sport I admired as much as anybody I've ever admired in motor racing said to me, I said to him, "Do you hold Peroni responsible for this?" And he said, "Oh yeah. He said he knew how absolute Gilles was. He knew exactly what stealing that race would do to him." And he said, as far as I'm concerned, he might as well have put a gun to his head.
Wow.
So
wow.
There were strong times. So,
Yeah, I was going to say there's yeah, obviously if without being there, it's hard to know what to add. I mean, what I will say actually, it was the day after the anniversary of losing Gilles this year. I happened to be in Belgium for the 6 hours of Spa, and we went from Brussels across to Zolder just to pop into Zolder, and I'd never been before. And obviously, we've all seen what happened with Gilles and the circuit and everything. Even I had a bit of a wobble. We got because there's the road behind the corner where Gilles was lost, and I parked up and just looked over the fence, and 5 seconds I was like, that's enough, because you can see it, and I'd never been, but it was very, very familiar, and it's just not a nice place to be, and knowing what had gone on before as well. But there is a very nice little tribute to Gilles at Zolder just behind the pits there, which is lovely. But no, I appreciate you talking about it, because I know you were good friends with Gilles as well. And so yeah, thank you for talking about it. There's a couple of other bits I just want to get your kind of expert or inside view on. Firstly, Francois Sever, obviously we know was lost, and we know how and everything. Utterly needlessly, the following year, Helmut Koenig went in a very similar way, in a very pretty much the same part of the circuit. From someone who kind of writes about motorsport and the problems within it, and the good and the bad, and what we knew about the barriers and everything at Watkins Glen, it's the needless losses like Helmut Koenig. Did you ever get angry at that kind of thing, saying, look, we know there's these problems, why haven't they been addressed? And obviously with what Jackie went on to do and really push for the safety of things, it must have annoyed you.
Yeah, I think I mean, thinking back, Francois' accident, in my head, it didn't really have an awful lot to do with safety. That I think that what happened to Francois, where it happened, it's so fast.
Yeah, with the S's, yeah.
And we're talking about 1973 cars. We're not talking about 2025 cars. And I simply don't think that accident was survivable. But in the case of Francois, I really don't. With Koenig, I don't know what one says. It was said at the time, that the Armco wasn't properly mounted. This is why the two pieces of Armco had separated, and he'd gone between them, and he was decapitated. And I've never known whether that was true, whether they were, the mounting of the Armco was faulty. And oddly enough, at the time, I don't really remember it being discussed very much.
Right.
He was, and and being cynical also is, the world was a very different place 50 years ago.
Of course.
Nowadays, a fatality in Formula One would be a colossal story. It was with Senna. It was with Ayrton.
Yeah, I mean, even going back, Jules Bianchi, a few years back.
Yeah. But 50 years ago, particularly if he wasn't a sort of quote famous name, it didn't really raise that much of a ripple, I'm afraid.
Yeah, because obviously Helmut wasn't as
new.
He was as Francois Sever.
Very new on the scene. He was a lovely, lovely bloke, I must say.
Yeah.
But always remember
Mike Wilde said the same thing to me a few days back about Helmut Koenig. He was a genuinely lovely chap as well.
He really was, yes. But I remember something comes back to him whenever I hear his name was. I remember talking to Jackie Hicks, and Jackie was looking back on his life, on his career, and talking about things about regrets he had. And he said, I regret looking back that I wasn't more friendly, I wasn't more sociable particularly with the younger drivers. And then he said, and at Watkins Glen that morning, I went to the circuit with Koenig. I think they went on a helicopter from the Glen Motor Inn up to the track, just the two of them. And he said that was the first time I ever met him, and he died that afternoon.
Oh goodness! Wow.
So
that's got to be an awful feeling.
Yeah.
I can only imagine that.
Yeah.
I have seen a comment just quickly from Barry Taylor over in the States. He said, "Do you still speak to M Villeneuve, which I'm sure is Melanie Villeneuve? Are you still in contact with her? She's actually she added me on Facebook, which is very strange. But
yeah. In fact, I was speaking to her, I don't know, about a month ago. She's there is I don't know if it's actually going to happen, but there's certainly serious talk of a fairly big movie about Gilles.
I think a lot of people would love that, wouldn't they?
Yeah, I think they would.
It'd be a terrific memorial to him as well.
So she's sort of keen to, get access to some of my interviews and whatnot with him.
Yeah. So, that'd be lovely.
Yeah, it would be. You're right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. We'd love to see that. And just very quickly, we need to press on to another few bits and pieces. This is Gilles2798 on YouTube. So, do you think Gilles would have gone to McLaren or Williams in '83 had he had the fate not on him?
I always thought that.
Yeah.
I think he would have gone to McLaren.
Yeah. Where he had only done one race before, hadn't he? He'd only raced once.
It's always fascinated me, that thought, actually, because he would have. So he would have been at McLaren, and he would have been at McLaren with Nicky.
Wow. Yeah.
And of course, had that happened, of course, that would have precluded Alan Prost going there, and
could have altered history, wouldn't it?
In '84, yeah. But yes,
Alan stayed at Renault with what happened with.
I'm sure. I do think he'd had enough of Piccinini, because without any question, Piccinini, Pirro's Piccinini's boy.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I think yes, he'd made up his own mind that, and also, I think he'd been there several years, and most of the time, not had a particularly competitive car. He did in '79 with the T4. The T4.
Yeah.
But the T5 in '80 was a terrible car. The first turbo was a fantastic engine, but nothing else.
Yeah.
I think he'd just had enough of the Ferrari politics.
Yeah.
So yes, I do think he would have gone to McLaren.
Yeah, I think that would have been quite something to see, wouldn't it? I mean, again, I want to sort of skip on from these from this kind of subject, but talk about because it was so prevalent at the time, and you were at the coalface almost. Two more needless losses. One that always, and if people haven't seen this footage, you really don't want to. Tom Price, Kyle Army, just a horrendous lot of mismanagement and bad luck, and then Ronnie Peterson as well. I mean, we lost two terrific races, completely needlessly, and again, it kind of spurred Jackie on to do what he did for safety. I always thought, obviously, we know Ronnie Peterson would have been wonderful, and everyone I've spoken to who knew Ronnie just absolutely adored the guy. But I think Tom Price was one who was really going places as well, wasn't he? And what happened at Kyle Army was horrendous, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, Tom's accident. I mean, it's quite hard. The circumstance. I mean, it's quite hard to talk about.
Yeah,
the idea of.
I had Hans Stuck on here, who was right in front of Tom, and he just he said he was okay to talk about it, but I said, look, we're not going to go into detail. And he went, no, fine. And we pretty much skimmed over it for that reason.
Yeah.
It's just an awful, just an awful thing. And same with Ronnie as well. It was just the delay, a needless delay, wasn't it? That
Well, you know, it was, but I mean, that was one of those evenings of my life I'll never forget. Because it was at Monza. It had been agreed that I was going to do. The likelihood was, I mean, Ronnie could still win the championship. The likelihood was it was going to be Mario.
Yeah.
And so I'd been approached by the publisher to write a book with Mario about his world championship year, and that was all agreed that weekend at Monza.
Oh wow!
So I spent a lot of time, more time than usual, in the I was going to say motorhome, in the Lotus Caravan. And so I was quite a lot of the time I was with Mario and Ronnie. Well, there was sort of killing time between sessions and whatnot. So then anyway, we had the race, and we had the catastrophe at the start and the delay. And by the time the race finished, it was amazing. I mean, amazing that it wasn't stopped earlier than it was, because it was almost dark.
Yeah.
I remember being so I'm in the paddock after, going down into the paddock afterwards, and it literally was dark. Started out dark, and the mechanics were frantically collecting stuff up to stop it being nicked. I mean, that's that's how dark it was. Anyway, I went to the Lotus. We'll call it a motorhome, as I say. And it was a very, very, very poignant scene, because Mario was sitting in there with a bottle or a magnum of champagne that he hadn't opened. He was world champion, but
But he knew that Ron was in a bad moment.
But this had happened to Ronnie, and I sort of sat there for a while, and we chatted about the race a bit. And he talked about how quick Shield was and what a star he was going to be, and da. But of course, everybody's thoughts were on Ronnie.
Yeah.
And of course they were. And then at about, I don't know, it was probably 9:30, 10 in the evening, a phone rang. I don't know, it was back then, who knows what it was, a mobile or one that was in the caravan. I have no idea what it was. Anyway, a phone rang, and it was Sid Watkins calling from the hospital.
Right.
To speak to Mario. And he said, or what he said to him was, vital signs are good, Mario. He's not going to be ready by the start of next year, but
but he'll be okay.
He'll certainly be back by half season.
Right.
Open your champagne, which he did. So we did, and we all have champagne, and we're all drinking Ronnie's health and Mario's championship, and suddenly it's as if this cloud's been lifted. And then, of course, well, I mean, I remember I flew back the next morning, and I remember we got to Heathrow, and Alan Brinton, who worked for one of the dailies, I think maybe for the Telegraph, went off when we landed at Heathrow, went off to make a phone call through to his paper while we're waiting to get our luggage. And he comes back with this stricken expression on his face, and he just looked at it, he said, Ronnie's died. And we could not take it in. And Mario had driven to the hospital early the next morning, and Emerson was on the steps when he got to the hospital, and Mario sort of bounced up, sort of, how is he, and all the rest of it. And Emerson had to tell him.
Yeah, so Mario actually said that he went to a toll booth at the end of the autostrada to come off and go to hospital, and the guy recognised him. And the guy sort of basically said to me, have you heard anything about Ronnie? And Mario went, yeah, he's his legs are not great, but he'll be okay. And he said it was about 20 minutes later that Emerson told him that what had happened.
Yeah.
And I spoke with Dave Brody, God bless him, who was a great friend of Ronnie as well, and he said that it hit him like a ton of bricks. He said he never really got over, because it just shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't, shouldn't have.
No, it absolutely shouldn't have happened. No.
Yeah, it's huge loss. Yeah, but no, again, thank you for talking about it. It's not not nice at all. Just want to skip forward. I mean, we know that it's fairly well known that you're a big fan of a certain Frenchman, Mr. Prost, and rightly so, because he's a terrific, fantastic racer. I've got to get your take on the Prost-Senna rivalry, particularly again Imola, 6 years after. Was it 6 years? Yeah, after Gilles and Didier, and what happened with Prost and Senna and the agreement, and then it only, all that kind of stuff that went on, because it wasn't an agreement. Whoever went into the first corner would control the race, but then the race got restarted, and Senna said it doesn't count, and all that kind of stuff. I've got to get your take on it.
Whoever got to Tosa first, the other driver would not threaten them.
Yeah,
and the race started, and Ayrton led, and Alain was second, and they got to Tosa, and Alain didn't make a move on him. But by now, of course, Gerhard had crashed.
Yes, big fiery accident.
So the race was stopped. And quite a long delay, and then a restart. This time, Alain gets us get away and leads to Tosa, and going into Tosa, Senna
goes up the inside.
Put the move on him, yeah. And Alain was, I think, quite justifiably furious. What's an agreement all about? And Senna's argument was, that was not the start, that was a restart.
And it didn't count, basically, the agreement didn't count.
No.
Which feels even now, it feels very flimsy, doesn't it? It feels like a very flimsy argument.
Flimsy. I was actually delighted when Jackie Stewart said this, because it was something I always believed. Jackie has always said he thought Prost better than Senna. And I must say I was always the same, because I always felt
that's not as exciting, I think, to the fans, and it's not.
Well, the thing about Prost was he made it look easier than anybody who ever lived, I think.
Yeah.
I can remember. I remember once watching qualifying at Monaco with Jenks out on the circuit, and they all came past, some visibly on the edge and some not, and all the rest of it. And honestly, Prost, it could have been a warm-up lap. I mean, it was so utterly undramatic. And then they announced he was quickest. And I remember Jenks looking at me and saying, "How the hell did he do that? How does he do it?"
Yeah. Just
one of those. The thing about Alain was, Alain is immensely proud of the fact that in his life he has never overturned a car, which I think that's quite.
Wow. I'd never thought of that, and I've never seen him up. Yeah,
never overturned a car on the road, on the track, or anywhere. And I always felt it's like people always talk about Alonso today. That Alonso has got more mental capacity than any of them in terms of he can drive at the limit and at the same time be thinking. And I think Prost was the epitome of that.
Yeah.
And always with Prost, you felt there was always a little bit left. That he was a little, as Fernando would call it, something in the pocket. Whereas with Ayrton, you always felt you were getting absolutely 100% of Ayrton every time.
Yeah.
He went out
Yeah.
in a car.
Obviously, two very different styles. And I think from the fans' point of view, a lot of people saw Ayrton as being more spectacular or
Well,
aggressive or whatever it might be, which is what people want to see. But from
a
a
lot,
racing point of
a
view,
lot of
Alan
people,
was,
a lot of people loved Ayrton for the same reason they love Gilles, and
yeah,
I understand it.
like that, like flamboyance as well.
Yeah. But I think, on the other hand, there's something always deeply impressive about someone making anything very difficult look extraordinarily simple.
Yeah.
And Prost did that.
Yeah. I think those who appreciate it will have seen it at the time. I mean, I was quite young. I mean, when Alan retired in '93, I was 12. So it's only through
Right.
looking back. It's only through looking back that I realised that, because I was very much like Senna, exciting, same as Mansell, if it was full out or in the wall or whatever. And as a kid, you love that, but when you get older, you look back and you think, God, Prost was something else.
Dare I say it, that was Jean Barra.
Yeah, yeah.
So yes,
From every generation, there's.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. And yeah, Alan, I had Alan's son, like Nico, on here, and I asked him about Alan, of course, and he just went, it's sort of nice to be related, to have him as my dad and everything, and hear all the lovely things people say about him and watch the videos back. But to me, he's just dad, and I'm just there going, it's Alan Prost. But obviously, to him, it is just dad.
Yeah.
Which is very strange
Yeah.
juxtaposition.
Yeah.
Just to zip on quickly to happier times. Well, we could touch on Ayrton and Roland and everything in Imola, but there's a lot of talk about that, and we know what's come of it and how it affected. I just wanted to talk to you though about Damon, because obviously you worked with Graham Hill, 74, 75, and I guess you remember a very young Damon. It would, given that you knew Graham and you spent so long in F1 and the industry and everything, when Damon won and Murray did his lump in my throat and all that, it was pretty special, wasn't it? I guess for having you seeing Damon as what, a 10 or 11-year-old lad, his father just died, and all in the circumstances. Was it an emotional time for you to see Damon win the championship in '96, particularly after controversy of '94 and all the other things with Schumacher and all that?
Yeah, I mean, and of course there was a great sort of, however you want to call it, poignancy about Damon winning the championship too, because it was World Championship year and he was getting pitched at the end of it.
Yeah, and the whole thing about son of Graham, first son of a world champion, and what was going on with Frentzen coming in, all that stuff, as you say. Yeah.
Yeah. No. I mean, I'm very glad he won it, because I mean, as it turns out, there was absolutely his one and only chance of winning it, because at the end of the year he was out of the team.
Yeah, and
sacked world champion.
What I find amazing is that he knew as well. He knew with a handful of races to go that he was going to be out.
He did only because it was only somebody leaked it. It was. It was set in stone a long time before Damon or any of us knew about it. Fundamentally, in '95, Frank and Patrick between them had just concluded, no, he's not good enough.
Wow, as early as '95.
Well, he didn't have a great year in '95.
No.
He had
he actually won. He actually won the last. Sorry, go on.
He had a great year in '94, the year Ayrton died.
Yes.
And of course, he had a great year in '96 when he won the championship. But '95, there were some races that were not great, and Frank and Patrick were, the original no nonsense pair, and they just decided, no, got to get somebody else.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
So it was a long time Damon's fate with Williams was sealed a long time before he knew about it, before any of us knew about it.
Wow. So there's obviously the discussion going. I did actually see today, it was 30 years ago today that he won the last Aussie Grand Prix at Adelaide.
The story was actually leaked to a friend of mine, another journalist. I won't say who it was, and nor will I say who told him, but it was another team owner.
Right. So, I see. Goodness. Oh, there's so many questions there, but I'm not gonna push. Just quickly, I mean, just touching on 96 when Damon won, obviously pressure was on him later on in the year when he knew he was out. This was his chance, and that adds its own pressures, and especially when you've got a certain Schumacher sort of biting at your heels. I just want to bring that up to like the present day with kind of the pressure and things and all the stuff that's going on with like Piastri and Norris, and people saying is there sabotage at McLaren and all this kind of nonsense, which is absolute rubbish. There's a lot to be said for pressure, isn't there, in F1 with, and I think that's what Oscar's dealing with at the moment. He's only a young lad. He's got the pressure of the team and everything on his shoulders. I'm just wondering if it might be perhaps parallels with Damon.
I have to say I'm very surprised. I really am, because something about him from the beginning, I thought he is an extraordinary character.
Yeah, he's got something, isn't he?
Well, I just remember, when he wins the first time, I mean, most of them get hysterical on the radio as soon as they've taken the checkered flag, and they're all sort of, whooping and screaming and hollering, and this quiet Australian voice just saying, "Thanks very much, guys. It was a really good year. I have no problems at all." And it was so calm. I just thought, you just won a Grand Prix, for the first time, and here you are. You sound as though
it's great. Well done.
Yeah, so quite remarkable. And I thought that will really stand you in good stead.
Yeah.
If something as shattering as this has just happened to you, and your immediate response is as calm and quiet,
it's just level.
That's wow. That's bloody impressive.
Yeah,
and he's always been like that.
Yeah.
And
there's no people saying there's issues with the car and stuff. I went, I don't buy it. I don't.
Well, I don't.
Surely not that obviously.
I look forward to hearing in the fullness of time what it's been all about, because, by halfway through the season, I really thought it's over.
Yeah,
because he looked he was quick, he was winning races, he seemed completely implacable, and the mistakes were mistakes such as they were being made by Lando.
Well, yeah, just look at Canada when he hit the back of
exactly. But he also, I know Lando won in Monaco and so on, but week in, week out, he seemed to be the one struggling. And I just thought, well, this is we'll talk about Piastri's to lose.
Yeah.
So he was the last bloke in the paddock I would have expected to, for whatever reason, for his season to suddenly start to come apart.
It's kind of unraveled.
And I really look forward in the fullness of time to knowing, what it was all about.
Exactly what has happened. I mean, because also people seem to forget that around this run of races last year at Circuit of the Americas and Mexico and into Lagos, he didn't do particularly well at those circuits last year either. So could it just be a circuit he's not well suited? Who knows? But yeah, it certainly seems to get off.
But think, this year, I mean, his critical weekend, his most terrible weekend was Baku.
Yes.
Now, Baku last year, he was sensational.
True.
He won the race, and after the most wonderfully audacious pass of Leclerc into the first turn.
It's terrific.
And that day, he looked unbeatable, and he was unbeatable.
Yeah.
but not the tiniest mistake. So yeah, that would have been a big setback for him. I'm sure this year to be back there at that place where he was overwhelmingly dominant.
It was so good. Yeah.
And then crashes in practice, crashes in the race.
Yeah. After bogging down at the start and everything and all that. Yeah.
So
Very
so
odd.
like I say, I look forward in the fullness of time to understanding what it is that's happened.
Yeah, for sure. Then obviously we'll see how this.
But I never would have expected it.
No, for sure. And we've got Las Vegas next, so that's going to be fun. I usually quite like the Las Vegas race, but that's just me.
Track's quite good.
I do love a street circuit, and it is a good circuit. Yeah. If that circuit was on some rolling hillsides, people would love it. But anyway, that's just my thought. I mean,
I haven't been to the recent Vegas, revived Vegas races, but I did go to the two we had, obviously, in 81, 82, and I mean, Vegas was a small place then.
Yeah, it's kind of sprawled a bit since.
It was a small place.
Yeah.
And there wasn't the tiniest interest in the race, not the slightest.
Yeah, because it was in what is the Caesars Palace car park, wasn't it?
It was. And when I was checking, I was staying at the MGM Grand, which was across the street from
just
Caesars
down the
Palace.
way. Yeah.
Well, it's not now. It was burned down.
Okay.
Whether it was an accident or not, no. Stories vary. But anyway, it burned down. But it's a very nice hotel. But I arrived there and I was checking in, and I was in a queue to check in. And the guy in front of me in the queue, I was speaking to somebody, and he heard me speaking, heard that I heard my English accent. And he said, "Oh, you're English. Well, why are you here?" And I said, "Well, I'm here for the race." And he says, "What race is that?" I said, "Well, it's the US Grand Prix. It's the Caesars Palace Grand Prix. It'll decide the outcome of the World Championship." And he said, "I wouldn't care if it decided the outcome of the American Championship." As if, that was considerably greater than the World Championship.
Yeah. In baseball, the American Championship is the World Series, isn't it? So
I just sort of thought, this isn't going to work, is it?
Yeah, this is not.
No. and it duly didn't.
No, it took another 30 odd years for it to come back. 40 odd years to come back, didn't it? In its current guise. Yeah, I mean, I've actually stayed in the Cosmopolitan Hotel, and it's a bit annoying the Grand Prix wasn't there because I could have seen them coming down the strip from my room. That would have been a heck of a week. But yeah, no, but we'll see how it goes. But yes, it's certainly taken off eventually in America, isn't it?
Well, it has, I mean, I'm still holding judgment. It took off because of Drive to Survive.
Yes, just seeing how long it's going to last. That'll be
Are these people really, really, really care about Formula One, or is it just the fad of the moment? And will they drop it just as easily as they picked it up?
Yeah, I think it's exactly that. Obviously, there's a bit of a boom on the back of Drive to Survive. I watched one episode of Drive to Survive and thought, nope, haven't watched it since, because it's just not. It's not what I fell in love with, and I get why people like it, but it feels like for maybe not 50% of the fan base, but certainly a decent percentage of it, that it is just another little fad that's going to fall by the wayside for them, which is a shame. And I'm not looking forward to the fallout of that, but I might be wrong. We'll see.
No, and they do try and turn every Grand Prix into a sort of Super Bowl.
Yeah. almost to the point of irritation.
It's more than almost in my case.
Yeah, good. I'm
I,
kind of
I,
glad you said that.
I, I like a race being weekend. I like a race weekend being about a race.
Yes,
First
exactly
and
that. Yeah. Now, there's a great comment in the comment section. F1 is a sport, not the Jeremy Kyle show.
yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
fair play
Yeah.
for that comment. We like that. Obviously, there's so many.
I got a press release this year from Spa.
Yeah.
But about a week before the race, and there've been talk about this. Oh, this has been resurfaced and that's been resurfaced, and they've moved the barrier back here. And I thought it would be about changes to literally. I assumed it would be about changes to the circuit, and it wasn't. It was about they telling me which celebrity DJs would be present. And I thought, this is Spa, for God's sake. Anyway,
Sacred ground in Europe to me, Spa. It's
well, it is. Yeah, it is.
just, yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, I saw on social media recently, it's like Silverstone, big Grand Prix announcement. I was like, okay, great. What's this going to be? Are they, what's going to, something about Silverstone? And they were announcing like David Guetta as the headliner of the show. Nothing against David Guetta. It's not my kind of thing, but he's obviously very, very good. But people were losing their mind over it. And it's just like, okay, it's something extra for your money, but can we hear about the race or the circuit or something? It just seems to be secondary these days, and it's very annoying. Very annoying. It's why I quite enjoy watching the World Endurance Championship at the moment. It's very good.
It is.
But yes, I mean, there's so many things I could talk about. We've got over 2 hours. I'm loving it. I could talk for hours. There's so many things I want to talk about. But someone has mentioned, and I've got it in my notes, the Grand Prix 500 program you did with Murray Walker. Someone actually sent me a message saying, please, please, please ask Nigel about this, because it was basically this guy's introduction to F1 and the fact that there was a whole history to it and all that kind of a thing. It's on my main computer on the dining room table. I watched it. It's on YouTube. I watched it last night. It's a terrific program. I've seen it many times.
A long time ago, Richard. Jesus.
Yeah, it's a terrific program, though. I loved it. And obviously, it's got Murray on it, and everyone loves Murray. Was it a bit of fun making that as well?
Yeah. I honestly can't remember a lot about it. As no, it was a long time ago.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
but yeah, Murray. I mean, we've got Murray. God bless him. I mean, everyone loves him. But I've only ever met one person who doesn't love Murray Walker, and I won't say who it is because he's also involved in broadcasting. But he was great, wasn't he?
he was. Murray was. He was not a great journalist because he was so. How can I put this?
Was his brain too far ahead of his mouth?
No. I think for one thing, I think fundamentally Murray wanted to be liked by everyone, and he was. He was adored by everyone.
Yeah.
I
spoke with Paul Page, his American counterpart, and he loved it.
I think Murray realised quite early on in his life that, if you wanted to keep friends, you didn't criticise them.
Yes. Yeah.
So, and it was always very apparent, wasn't it, when he was doing the commentaries with James? James would be coming out with pretty outrageous stuff some of the time, and Murray would be trying to smooth the waters over.
Yeah. Yes. He's very diplomatic.
Well, fundamentally, Murray. I don't really remember Murray ever criticising anybody in the paddock.
Yeah,
I don't. I mean, that's. I will draw a line under that and say that I still, for all that, you might criticise him for in some of his opinions being a bit bland, and maybe there were times when people deserved criticism and didn't get it. Having said that, while I may have had my reservations about him as a journalist, I thought he was a fantastic broadcaster.
Yeah, absolutely.
I thought, and I mean, I remember saying to him, you know, Murray, your great genius, in my eyes, is, you know, Formula One has its fair share of immensely tedious afternoons when not much happens. Your great God-given gift was making a tedious afternoon sound exciting, and he did. I don't know how he did it, but he absolutely did.
Yeah.
And so that was one thing, and the other thing too is, I think back now to, you know, the immediate aftermath of Senna's accident.
What a pro!
And of course, you know, we're all in the press room, staring at the screens, and I was lost in admiration for him that day. And I've been many a time actually in those circumstances.
Yeah.
Really, when something really horrible happens, and you're just reliant really on this one voice to hold things together, you know, to keep the broadcast going, and get the tone just right, which he did always impeccably.
I mean, for someone who gets so excitable,
on an occasion like that, then I think you sort of realise, oh, Jesus, this really is what a great broadcaster is.
Yeah,
and he was.
Sure. For sure. I mean, I said before, I had like Paul Page on here, obviously the voice of the Indy 500 and American motorsport, and he just couldn't speak highly enough of Murray. He just said, you know, he said the best time he ever had while commentating was when Murray came and did an IndyCar or a kart race at the time.
Right.
And he just said, it was just an absolute privilege watching Murray work, and do what Murray did.
It's true. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, wonderful guy. Okay, one more thing before we get onto some just fun little bits and pieces at the end. You got behind the wheel of an F1 car. I always wanted to talk to people who have driven F1 cars. 82, Paul Ricard, the Renault. Sounds like a silly question, but how was it?
Well, I mean, it was amazing. I mean, I should start by saying it was wet, and I spun it in a straight line.
Good going.
Yeah, in my own defence, it was extremely cold, and the cockpit, the confines of the cockpit were quite tight, and I had to take my shoes off for my feet to be able to fit into the, you know, space where, of course, there were 3 pedals, of course, in those days. So I was just wearing socks, and it was extremely cold, and I didn't have a lot of feeling in my feet, so that's my defence. Anyway, to cut a long story short, yes, went round this sort of hairpin thing they'd set up, and then I was intent on. I thought, well, I've just got to floor it. I've got to feel what, you know, Formula One horsepower is, because this was the turbo days, 1.5 litre turbo, which is what I did, and I floored it, and I changed into third, and I floored it again, and then it looped. I hit a puddle and just away I went. But they did start.
That was a fun ride.
They did come out and you know, refire it and get me on my way again.
Yeah.
So I carried on. An incredible experience to. I can remember thinking, you know, because I'd lost it on this puddle in a straight line, and then I remembered Monaco in '82. That year, Prost was leading the race towards the end, and he came out of the chicane. You remember, in the wet
before tobacco, wasn't it?
Yeah, and lost it.
Yeah.
So I was straight that, but I thought, well, if he can do it, you know.
Yes, perhaps it's not so bad. Yeah,
But it was
that was the race that nobody wanted to win, wasn't it?
there
That
was
was the
that's
race that it was
yeah,
Patrese spun it, and then
yeah, that's
Daly and
right.
Peroni and De Cesaris and
Yeah, yeah. But it was an eye opener from the point of view of thinking just that of when you sort of felt the power of it, the very idea of trying to drive that thing around Monaco
God,
in the wet with that, with that amount of power. No, again, sad to say, it doesn't seem things like that never seem to happen these days. I mean, it's amazing. Renault just. I remember getting the phone call saying, "How would you like to drive our Formula One car?" So I said,
you're
"Well,
like,
I think I could be persuaded."
yeah,
Um,
had to think for about a nanosecond.
there were about 20 or 25 of us down there, and including
Right.
Jenks, who was then. How old was he? He was 62. He was so he's but Jenks got in it and drove it, no bother. And it was just a Renault jolly, a Renault outing. They thought that would be good PR, and it bloody well was.
Absolutely right. Yeah. God,
Yeah.
could you imagine that now? God, dear
No,
me.
no, no, no. I mean, things like that.
Absolutely no chance. Not a
No,
chance.
no, no.
Right. Okay. I need to grab a couple of the comments here that have come in. I mean, I said there's so many things we could talk about. There's a couple of bits I need to grab on here. A good. What we got here? Simon Steele. He says, "Does Nigel still think Fernando Alonso is the greatest of his generation?"
Yes.
Good answer. I think the same. Big fan of Fernando Alonso. Big fan. We like that.
Interesting. The other day, I noticed that I read about it in an interview. Fernando's first year in Formula One, when he was with Minardi,
Yes,
and
Minardi.
his teammate was Tarso Marquez,
Yes, Tasso.
Brazilian, and he did an
Still
interview.
racing now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but he did an interview about 4 or 5 weeks ago. They were talking to him about Fernando, and bear in mind he's Brazilian, the land of Ayrton Senna. He said, in my mind, he's easily better than Lewis Hamilton, definitely better than Michael Schumacher, and in my head, better than Ayrton Senna.
Crikey, that's some
Oh,
statement,
bloody hell.
isn't it?
For a Brazilian to say that, that's remarkable.
That's almost sacrilege, isn't it?
Well, it is, but
but
Max was interviewed recently and asked how he rated, his fellow drivers, and he said, well, for qualifying, first name I think of for sure instantly is Charles.
Right.
And he said, fantastic, qualifier. But in all other respects, I would say Alonso.
And see, this is the thing. I don't think people these days understand how good Alonso is. I mean, I've always thought that he's so good, and he's still going. He's still getting more out of the car than Lance is getting. And he's done the Indy 500. He's done all kinds. He's done Le Mans. He's done everything.
I think most people get more out of it than Lance Stroll does, but
I can't. I'm terrified.
But no, I mean, what Max said was, what he admired was, he said, his fantastic capacity to think while he's driving.
Yeah.
So he said, he's got that end of it. He said, but he's also a fantastic racer.
Yeah.
Even after all these years,
he can still.
Yeah, absolutely. And he said, to me, he's the best all-round driver in the business.
Wow.
Which I thought was amazing, considering the bloke's not won a Grand Prix for 13 years.
Yes.
But Max still,
yeah,
rates him that highly.
I've said with a bit of better fortune and perhaps a bit of he's always gone to good teams at the wrong time, and I think he could have easily won 5 or 6 world championships. Comfortably.
Yeah.
Not even close. Yeah, hugely underrated by, well, certainly the Drive to Survive generation, shall we say. I'll put it that way. Very quick, our friend Diffan Evans. Hello, Diffan. Hope you're well, mate. He's a BTCC fan. What did you think of Nigel getting into the British Touring Car Championship shootout thing at Donington and then hitting the wall?
I'm trying to think of an answer to that question. How can I put this diplomatically?
You don't have to.
Well,
put it any way you like.
I love saloon car racing when Jimmy Clark was doing it in a Lotus Cortina.
Got it. Yeah, gotcha.
And Jack Brabham was doing it in a Mustang.
Yeah.
And I do find it hard to get excited about front-wheel drive little cars, I'm afraid. I'm
that's fair enough. Absolutely fair enough.
I know a lot of people will condemn me for saying that, and there are a load of BTCC devotees, I understand that too. It just doesn't do it for me, I'm afraid.
No. Just as,
So I wasn't...
we can't all like all racing, can we?
When Nigel did it, of course, there was, as there always was with him, of course, there was theatre attached.
Yes, Mansell Mania and all that, wasn't it?
But I just didn't really like to see him doing that after the career he'd had, and in the same way, I didn't like seeing Derek driving in it either.
I knew you were going to say Derek. Yeah, Derek.
Oh no, don't do that, Derek. You've been a Formula One.
And like he didn't particularly enjoy himself, did he, Derek?
No,
again, I caught up with Derek for lunch a few weeks ago,
he didn't.
Yeah, not his thing. And another question though, from like Diffan says, do you have a favourite season of F1 that you've reported on, or is there anything that sticks in your mind as being a particularly standout season? For good, we'll go for good.
It's difficult. I mean, I enjoyed '86 because there were several bulls in the china shop, if you like. I mean, there were,
Yes.
Williams had Keke and Nigel, and McLaren had Prost, Lotus had Senna, all won races. And I did like the turbo era. I really did. I mean, qualifying in the turbo era was really, really something to watch.
That's my era as well. That's my era. I've always said 86 is when it started for me.
Yeah.
And the Brabham as well.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
Brabham was incredible.
But it pleased me as well that I know it was terrible luck on Nigel. The tyre in
Adelaide,
in Adelaide. But it did please me that in the end Prost won it, because I thought overall he was the most deserving driver of the year to win it.
It was a victory for the consistency and the thinking.
Well, I remember talking to Keke in practice. Keke was Keke's last race, and he was Alan's McLaren teammate, and he didn't have a great year, but he felt so strongly that only one man should be world champion that year, and that was definitely Prost.
Yeah.
And he just said, and I'm going to do everything possible I can to help him.
So,
and I said, "Are you saying you think he's the best?" And he said, "Nigel, I don't think he's the best. I know he's the best."
Wow.
He said, "In my head, he's on a different level from any of the rest of us."
Yeah.
So I was that was that was a pleasing outcome of the championship for me, because I thought he was the most deserving of it that year.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
So probably that would be very high up there, 86. If I gave it more thought, I could probably come up with others, but that's the one that immediately comes back to me.
yeah, it's so nice that you said that, because I said it was my first year and first year of being into it, and basically, and I will admit, at the time, I basically followed all the Brits, because it was the first year I followed. Was it Brundle and Jonathan Palmer and Johnny Dumfries and obviously Nigel and all the other guys that were in it. And I was gutted. I was heartbroken when I watched the highlights and Nigel with his tire had blown up. But obviously, again, looking back at it with an older head and looking back at it, yeah, Prost was terrific. Terrific that year. Often overlooked as a championship year by Brits.
They had quantifiably less horsepower, load less horsepower than Honda.
Yeah,
and he still did it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, got a question here. Oh, just 2 or 3 more. We're gonna before we wrap up, because goodness me, it's 2.5 hours. My word, it's 11 o'clock. Okay, Chris Hall, he who got the Bernie Ecclestone's right-hand man correct. He said, if Nigel could have been at, this is a great question, or a horrible one, I don't know. If Nigel could have been at one Grand Prix from 1906 onwards, which would it have been? I mean, there's only 1,000 to choose from.
Oh, Jesus.
That's a rotten question, Chris.
It's a cliche, but I suppose I would have chosen Fangio's mesmeric win at the Nürburgring in 1957.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I'm thinking about it. I mean, you wouldn't have seen it very often, because the lap was so long, and they were away long periods between. I mean, German Grand Prix I saw there was sort of 8 minutes, and you thought 8 minutes, you can do a lot in 8 minutes. They came past, and you went off and got a sandwich and a beer, and came back, and there was still time to wait before you saw them. You saw them again, but that drive, he was on pole position for that race, but in the race himself, when he was chasing Collins and Hawthorne, he took 8 seconds off his pole time.
Astonishing.
All right, I know it's a long lap and everything else, but 8 seconds. And one of the great highlights of my life actually was, I mean, I met Fangio quite a few times, but I only ever interviewed him once. And we were talking about that, and he just said to me, he was just talking about that race that afternoon. And he said, I never drove like that before, and I knew I never would again. And he said, and even thinking about it now, I'm starting to tremble.
Wow. And
he meant it.
That's when you know it's something else.
Yeah. So I think, as I said, I know it's a cliche, because it is always held up as, the great race, the great drive. But I suppose that's probably the one I would pick.
Yeah.
And the other one, actually, just before we go any further, would be Jim Clark at Monza in 1967, when he had a puncture in the early laps. And he then made up a whole lap on the leaders. Imagine that. Made up a whole lap on them and took the lead again.
That's unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah, and then ran out of petrol on the last lap, finished third.
Yeah, after all that. God, would have been something else to be at those for sure. Just very quickly before I get to my last 3 questions here, Stuart Branch on YouTube, he's just said, thank you, Nigel, for writing about drivers like David Purley, Chris Amon and Frank Gardner, lesser known heroes. Absolutely right. Here.
I'm not sure I put Chris bracket with them, with those two. I'd bracket Chris. I'd bracket Chris with Stuart and Rent.
Yes, he might have been talking about winners, which is terrible to class him as that. But yes, certainly David Purley, especially after what he did with Zandvoort. was an awful situation that was. But yeah, lovely to see. Okay, right. I've just got a few questions that I'm going to do just to wind down. Nice and little quick fire ones. Have you got a favourite circuit that you visited?
Well, the best, I suppose, that you talk about the best circuit, you'd have to. I mean, everybody talks about the Nürburgring, of course they do. Sad to say, I went to the old Spa only once in my life, to the 1,000-kilometre sports car race in '72, and it's an abiding regret of mine that I never ever saw a Formula One race at the old Spa, because that still stands in my head as the circuit.
Yeah,
you know, and you go to Spa to the race now and drive around it, and again, every time you go around it, you think they didn't really race around here, did they? Did they really? This was the track. Jesus.
Well, I mentioned I went earlier this year for the 6 hours of Spa, and we parked basically just the other side of like Les Combes on the drop down the hill towards Bournonville, and I drove. I was in a Hyundai Tucson hire car, and I drove around Bournonville and through the Master Kink, and I was thinking, and I got my mate to video it. I mean, I'm going to speed this up and pretend I'm Jackie Stewart because it's an incredible bit of.
You think of the Master Kink flat in a Formula One car.
I mean, it's kind of pretty. It kind of gets your attention doing sort of 40 miles an hour in a Hyundai, but
absolutely. So, as I say, I sadly never saw a Formula One race there. But I really enjoyed the 1,000 Ks. But other tracks, I mean, Clermont-Ferrand was a fantastic track.
Yeah.
Very, very similar in character to the Nürburgring.
Yeah, because that had bits of like gravelly. It was like an old volcano, wasn't it?
I came across a picture the other day of it was Eamon actually in '72 in his fantastic comeback drive. And he'd been leading in the first half of the race and got a puncture. It took a minute to change the wheel, if you can believe that, but it did. And so he rejoined in 8th and shattered the lap record time after time, came back to 3rd. I came across this picture of him a few days ago, and the car, you can just tell by the set of the car, it's a kind of uphill right-hander. And you can just tell by the set of the car, it's absolutely on the limit. And you can tell by the state of the tyres and everything else. Yeah. And awaiting him on the outside of the corner is a rock face.
Yes. Yeah. I think,
so,
the right-hander is up the hill, yeah.
Yeah, track limits really worked in those days.
Yeah, stick a massive mountain in the way and people might might not take liberties.
Literally a rock face.
Yeah. Because that was where Helmut Marko had his visor thing, wasn't it?
Marko, yeah, he was.
I'm sure it was.
I think it was. I can't remember whose car it was that flicked up. It was just in front of him. It was on the.
Aldi or Peterson or someone, wasn't it?
That was that race. I think it was the first lap of that race.
Yeah.
And it's always amazed me. I mean, I've complimented him on it. That somehow, because where it happened was there's a downhill section, very, very quick. Not a place to, go off. And he somehow, this happened, and he somehow stopped that car by the side of the track without hitting a thing. And can you imagine that with a stone in his eye?
Yeah, having come through the. Yeah,
and just a shock apart from anything else. I have no idea how he did that. But anyway, that was a fantastic track.
That's a cool one.
I don't know. I mean, in England, I always thought the best circuit by far in England was Alton Park. They've ruined it now with chicanes, but
well, yes, that's true. Yes,
but between Ireland and Knickerbrook, they've stuck 2 chicanes in, not just one, which has spoiled it. But otherwise, I still thought it was a really, really good circuit. Alton.
Yeah. Very, very cool. I forget who I was speaking to recently who really... Oh, it was Jan Magnussen, who's obviously driven everything and won everywhere. And he said he always loved Alton Park. Oh, Jan, which is very cool. Okay, we've got two more questions. Have you got a favourite F1 car of all
before
time?
but if you asked me to choose one circuit, where if I had to choose just one circuit to go back to, it would definitely be Monza. Just the atmosphere at Monza isn't like anywhere else, I've ever been to.
Yeah, and I've never been for a Grand Prix. We're hoping to go next year.
You should. It should. Everybody should see it.
But just being at the place, I took a hire car around Monza. I'm not sure I should have done it. It was a Fiat Panda. You've never seen a less cool taking of the Parabolica than I did in a silver Fiat Panda in 2011. It was guys on motorbikes just sort of hooning it past me, looking at me, going, "What are you doing?" But I didn't care. I drove Monza. But yeah, I definitely want to try and get to. It was a fantastic circuit. Okay. Do you have a favourite F1 car of all time? I think we've all got one, but yeah, do you have one?
Yeah, I think so. Nothing modern, I'm afraid.
No, fair enough.
I don't find today's Formula One cars attractive to look at all, I'm afraid.
Same.
I was really struck at Silverstone when they're all up on the podium and down and below. I'm trying to remember which. Was it a Red Bull? I'm not sure. I think it was a Red Bull, or it might have been. Perhaps it was a McLaren because McLaren won the race. Anyway, there was a contemporary Formula One car down there under the podium, and next to it, the Alfa 159 that won the first World Championship race at Silverstone in 1950. It looked like a
toy.
It did. I mean, when you see that, you think, oh, this is very neat, but it's a sort of fair-sized car. You see photographs of Farina and Fangio driving them. Didn't look like a little car, but compared to a contemporary F1 car, it literally did look like a toy.
Yeah.
So I think, it's always been very important to me that racing cars are beautiful. And I still think probably the long nose Maserati 250F, just for sheer beauty, is stands alone.
Yeah, beautiful car. That's a beautiful car.
Yeah, just absolutely beautiful car. Yeah.
I think we'd always pick ones from our youth, wouldn't we? Or ones from that era where we got into it. I mean, mine will always be the '86 Lotus JPS, closely followed by the Emerson Fittipaldi's 72, I think. But yeah,
not the 79.
From an innovation point of view, I love it. But basically, my top three cars. I mean, that's probably my third. I think my top three cars are all JPS. Lotus, low tie.
I really thought the 79 was beautiful.
Yeah,
it was.
Yeah, I think Emo's one 72. I think I had a toy car when I was a kid. It's just down there. I've still got it. It's still scuffed and battered. It's still the first one I remember looking at and going, "Oh my god!" And then was it the 98 T? Wasn't it in '86? But yeah. There's so many lovely cars out there, but yeah, the Alpha is a heck of a shout. Okay, here's a rotten penultimate question. Your favourite F1 racer of all time?
Well, it's difficult because do I say Barra, who was my great hero when I was a kid? It's so difficult. Do I say Eamon, who was so wonderful to watch with his gorgeous opposite lock driving style. Or Prost, who made it look so easy. Or Gilles.
Wow.
God, this is really difficult. It's
a tricky one, isn't it?
It truly is. God, you really tie me down. I wish I had more time.
We can name a few. It's fine. We can...
give me a few more minutes, or another couple of minutes to think about it. You know who the candidates are.
Yes. Yeah, they're on the shortlist.
I could put Jimmy Clark. You see, I could put Jimmy Clark in there as well, and I could put Jochen Rindt in there.
Yes, yeah.
So it's very, very hard to pick one.
Yeah, especially with so many years and greats to choose from. I mean, I was just going to say. I mean, my final question was going to be: can you encapsulate why you love motorsport in one phrase or a few words or anything? Because there's so many things that draws people into it. Can you encapsulate it in a word or a phrase or something like that? It's another rotten one, isn't it?
Well, it's the talent I would love to have had.
I like that. Yeah.
And I suppose, like all of us who watch, it puts something in my life that I can't put there myself.
Oh, I like that a lot. I think there's a lot of people that would get on board with that. Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It puts something there I can't put there myself. Yeah, that's brilliant. I like that. I like that a lot. No, that's good. Yeah, I think I might steal that. That's great.
Feel free.
Yeah, that's terrific. That's terrific. I won't put you on the spot with your favourite driver of all time. I mean, we know the candidates, and I think we all know why it's very difficult to choose between them, for sure.
Well, from a purely sentimental point of view, I would say Chris Amon.
Yeah.
From a hero point of view, I would say Barra.
Yeah.
And if you wanted me to tie me down more recent times, Fernando.
Love that. I think that's a terrific answer from across the generations. And I think it's a perfect place to wind down. I mean, we said an hour and a half. It's been nearly 3. I've kept you far later than I ever intended to, but it's been absolutely fantastic hearing your journey and your insights and your thoughts and recollections and everything. When I was reading Autosport and Motorsport magazine when I was a kid, I never thought I'd be speaking to you. So thank you very, very much indeed for coming on. It's been absolutely brilliant.
A pleasure. A great pleasure.
Wonderful. Also, thank you very much, guys, for tuning in. There's been loads of you, all the comments and the questions. I hope we've covered everything for you. Thanks very much for tuning in. We'll be back again next week. And but of course, again, the biggest thanks go to you, Nigel. It's been an absolute privilege speaking with you. And thank you for everything that you've done for motorsport journalism over the last goodness knows how many years. You've shaped so many of our interests. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thanks very much, guys. We'll speak to you very soon.